Hello and welcome to an episode of Otome O'clock.
Woohoo!
What's up, Rox? I see you in that chat. Girl, how you doing? So, this week for our viewing pleasure, we are playing Made Marion. Megan, can you tell us a little bit about this game?
So, Made Marion is by Velvet Cupcake Games. It is sort of a fusion of your traditional Robin Hood myth with a little Arthurian legend in there. They live, I believe, on the Isle of Avalon.
Okay.
So, and there's a few different countries in game. But in general, it has all your, Robin Hood characters. You can date Robin Hood.
Okay.
Little John.
Mm-hmm.
And Will Scarlet.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Sherwood. Or, that's not the... Is that the Sherwood route? No, I know it's the Sherwood people, but I can't remember in-game if that's called the Sherwood route. But there's those three, and they're all sort of... there's a tipping off point where you can either go with Robin Hood, or you can go with the Sheriff of Nottingham, who is physically based off of... oh my god. Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham. Oh yes, his name is Joffrey in game.
Oh no. Why would they do that?
Do not worry. Oh, he's named Joffrey because of Chaucer. And Chaucer's
Okay, because that made me think of Game of Thrones. Worry. I'm like, don't do that.
No, he's a very respectful husband.
Okay.
And you know what? He's so respectful that if you don't want a physical relationship beyond just we have to have an heir, he's cool with it. You can date someone else. It's fine.
Now, Megan, we should tell the people about what is Otome O'clock. What is this thing you just clicked on?
So Otome O'clock is a stream where Ashlee and I play a sort of dating sim game. Dating sims are typically, they can have the one where you're just trying to get friendship points with a person and to date them. That's sort of like your hatoful boyfriend. You're your very traditional Japanese Otome game. A game like Made Marion is more something called an Mare game, where there's a specific plot and you are trying to do plot-based things, but there's different routes to do, and you have it's less just about collecting enough points to date someone, and more there's an overarching plot that you are a part of, and you can smash particular characters. Now, this is a particular type of a Mare game where you don't really create your own character as much as you play as a character that's pre-made. So you're playing as Made Marion in this game. Now, she's less of a damsel in distress than she is in your typical
the traditional myth.
She's taught more sword fighting in this one.
So she's more proactive in her own story.
She's more proactive, especially because she's the main character you play as. But she's more proactive because, her dad went off to war, and her mom just ran off with some dude, so she had to run her kingdom.
Nice.
Or, her little, duchy or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember what title her father has. So she had to run it herself. And then, we'll see more of this in-game, but she has an arranged marriage her father made for her.
Oh, that's nice. Love a good arranged marriage.
And then, the Robin Hood part comes in, where, there's Robin Hood, there's the Sheriff of Nottingham, and there's some extra non-Robin Hood characters, mostly in the Nottingham route, I believe, is the sheriffs.
All right.
If you go.
And what you can expect from us, since this is more of a text-based game, there's not going to be, normally there's not too much voice acting in the games that we've played.
Yeah.
Megan and I are going to be reading this to each other.
Yeah.
And that includes uncomfy, steamy moments, which is going to be awkward as hell, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we want to just crawl out of our skin.
Yeah, as much as we want to just die. Shuffle off our skin like a slug covered in salt.
Alright, so is that it? Well, I'm Ashlee A button, you are
Mega-han. You can find me on Instagram at Mega-han_ or Mega_Han_Otome.
Very nice. And in the corner we have Adam.
Yeah, whatever.
He may or may not be screaming, because he may or may not be playing Conan Exiles. Just he wants to exist in the room with us. We're doing, what is it called?
Parallel play.
Yeah, we're doing parallel play while we stream. So if you hear random screaming, you know what it is.
Well, if you run out of game, you can always just
Everything defaults to Conan Exiles lately. But let's get this party started.
If your game runs short, like it sometimes does, you can always just switch over to my feed because I'm on the X. But I mean, just make sure I'm not at my base because my stream is not safe for work.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Not with those boobalas.
Those emergency flotation devices. All right, let's start this game. Now, right now
Yes.
we're playing
Also,
the extended
Megan,
demo.
I was trying to move your microphone away
Enhanced
from
demo.
your face because you're really popping your peas.
You don't want me all up in here?
Yeah, I can hear you breathing.
All right, so Megan, should we? Who's reading what?
So, do you want to read Marion or should I?
Do you want to?
I'll read like the NPCs, like romance characters, like Roan. I'll read for Roan and stuff.
Okay.
But then, do you want to read like Marion and maybe we'll figure out who? We'll see how far the demo goes.
Okay.
You know?
All right, but you're starting off with Roan.
Yes.
Okay. This is also part of the fun game. Deciding who reads what.
Yeah.
So NPCs and background illustration.
I'll do NPCs. You do Marion and like narrator text.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Donnie, no, I'm Roan, here to welcome you to the Made Marion extended demo. Don't mind me breaking the fourth wall. I was born Fae, so I have some special abilities. Also, that's another thing the Fae are, and there are Fae characters. There are druids.
Hell yeah!
And I think there's going to be a DLC where you can bone a druid. But we don't know, like, there's going to be 2 DLC romances. We don't know who the other DLC romance is.
Okay.
Our demo begins partway through the game. In full release, you will play through a prologue that introduces you to Marion and shows you how she got into this whole mess.
Who doesn't love a full release?
You know, I appreciate that because sometimes, like in a game, like if the demo is the intro, I'm like, you're not really giving me a taste of what you're really. Yeah.
And for Made Marion, Will's Root just dropped a couple weeks ago. So they have 2. So Velvet Cupcake Games has 2 roots out now, Robin and Will. And we might be playing Robin next month until the DLC for them. Yes.
The druid?
No, the DLC for 2.5.
Date with Death?
Date with Death.
Now, is that going to be a whole new route, or are we going to play through the same story and there might be a couple extra screens?
I think there's gonna be extra days.
Okay. Let's see. Okay,
Yes.
so we're going to do the demo this week and then full game the next couple episodes after?
Yeah.
Okay.
But for now, we wanted you to have a chance to meet our attractive love interests as soon as possible. Just make sure not to load any demo saves when you play the full game, or you'll miss a lot.
Valid.
We're joining the action as Marion finds herself in an arranged marriage to Lord Joffrey, a man she's never met. Her father didn't even give her the chance to go out on the social circuit and see more of the world first. Rude. First up, you'll need to choose which main path Marion takes. If she faces her destiny and agrees to marry Lord Joffrey, she'll end up in Sherwood Forest and meet Robin Hood, his lieutenant John, and his cousin Will, the Scarlet the Scarlet Blade. If she decides to escape from her arrangement, she'll end up in Nottingham and will meet the sage Mesa, who's non-binary. The bard Alana, who you can also romance. She is your single lesbian romance. The Chevalier, Guy, and Lord Joffrey himself. These 2 paths are completely different stories, so you should try them both. But for now, pick one, and remember, there are no wrong choices, except for that one bad end. Toodaloo. You know, I can say Chevalier in my head perfectly fine, but the moment I have to say it out loud, I'm like, bah!
Just
What
like
words.
that. Which path to be taken?
Okay. So, do you want to meet Robin Hood first, or do you want to meet the Sheriff of Nottingham first?
Dealer's choice. I'm filled with minor executive dysfunction tonight.
So I will say that if this is short enough, we could probably do both routes. I feel like Marion. See, the thing is, I feel like she would at first try to go through with it because she's like, this is for,
Because she's taken charge of her kingdom, and this is what she needs to do
Yeah,
to make sure
yeah.
that her people are okay.
Oh, also in this game, in this universe, it is very rare for humans to have more than one child
Okay.
because they made a deal with the Fae plot.
So you have to be very picky on who you have your child with.
Yeah, you get maybe one kid.
Maybe.
Maybe one kid.
Sure what it is.
Sure what it is.
Firstborn deal has gone sideways.
Yeah.
Some most unusual bandits.
This is you, Ashlee.
Oh, so this was Sherwood Forest. I gazed out the window of my carriage, watching the sea of green roll by. Sherwood appeared far more lush than our local forest in Glastonbury. Huge broadleaf and pine trees were coated in emerald moss, anchored by an explosion of verdant ground cover. The green upon green seemed to stretch on forever. Here and there I saw particularly unusual, magically enhanced plants that stood testament to this massive woodland being a seat of power for the Fae. I tried to distract myself from my dark thoughts by imagining the Fae cavorting beneath the forest boughs, despite being quite unable to see them myself. I wasn't normally prone to flights of fancy, but... Oh, shadows! I cursed softly. Nervously, I wiped my hands down the skirt of my velvet dress, green as the woods outside. This was really happening. I'd been trussed up in my country noble best and shipped off to marry a man I'd never met. Still, I'd make the decision to face the destiny that had been presented to me, and I was going to stick with it. Probably. What would I do if Lord Joffrey had a mean streak? Or worse, if he was violent?
Beat his ass.
Whoop that ass! I gazed down at my traveling boots, in which I managed to conceal a small dagger. It was no doubt insufficient against a man with a lifetime of combat training and an entire troop of guards, but it was all I had. My father would never have allowed me to bring my sword. My troubled thoughts were interrupted as I heard a yell and was thrown backward into my seat. The carriage had stopped. Theo pulls up his horse next to my window with a stern look on his face. He decided to return home to his husband in Nottingham, so he volunteered to lead the small escort that was guarding my carriage.
Fallen tree across the road. It's probably nothing. Lock up tight, just in case.
I nodded and pulled the wooden shutters down over the windows, locking them securely. The doors were remarkably locked. The doors were already locked, but I tested them anyway just to be safe. Surely it couldn't be a bandit trap. The Sherwood Fae were supposed to be quite powerful. They would never let a band of ruffians go around chopping down trees in their woods. I gasped as a loud thud suddenly sounded on the carriage roof, followed by shouts and the muffled sounds of battle all around me. Perhaps the Fae weren't as powerful as I thought, or the bandits had found a dead tree to tip. I gritted my teeth as the carriage shook under the weight of the rooflander's apparent scuffle with our driver. I started thinking of the best way to negotiate over the dowry chest that lay beneath my seat. Honestly, I didn't mind handing over all of it, but it'd be rotted before I allowed them to take me for ransom. After one last mighty shake, the carriage stilled. I heard a quick clicking sound and the door opposite my seat swung open. A tall and nattily dressed stranger, Sun Jatai, by the looks of him, stood on the other side. Had he picked the lock on the door? That fast? Did I say that right?
I believe so, yes. So, that's another country in game. There's 3 countries. There's, like, Avalon,
Do they have
Sanjata.
a word pronunciation?
Yeah, not pronunciation, but it's telling what you is. Sanjata.
I love a good glossary.
And there's also, the one that Joffrey's mom is from that I cannot remember the name of. Oh. Sorry, the screen changed for a hot second.
Oh, you're fine. He removed his sword belt and slid onto the seat next to me. The belt and a pair of long, scabbarded swords landed softly on the opposite seat. He languidly crossed one leg over the other as though he were here for tea. Then he turned to me with a thin half-smile.
Hello, Princess. I would like to say this is Will Scarlet. He is one of the kissable characters.
He spoke in a fine tenor with no trace of Sunjatai accent, but princess? Really?
Don't mind me.
He then folded his arms and turned his gaze to the opposite wall, seemingly done with the conversation. I backed against the door behind me and stared at his fine clothes and apathetic manner. This man couldn't possibly be a bandit, could he? Confused and a bit frightened, I couldn't force my mouth to work for a few moments. Finally, I managed to bleed out. Who are you?
Bah. I'm just keeping an eye on you. Boss's orders. Wouldn't want you trapezing off into the forest, would we? Traipsing. Whatever.
He hadn't answered my question, but
bleeding out.
but now I know he wasn't the boss. Perhaps that august personage was engaged in the lively fight I could still hear outside. I had a feeling my guards didn't have the advantage. There weren't a lot of them. We hadn't expected this. If I were going to try to escape, best to do it while I only had one man to deal with.
Try to bribe him. She didn't want the fucking dowry anyways.
The bandit didn't appear either slow or foolish, so I needed to rely upon my greatest strength in order to escape. Try to bribe him with that dowry.
Yeah.
I leaned forward. I leaned just a tiny bit forward. So, this boss of yours, does he pay you well? He turned his head ever so slightly towards me.
Well enough.
Don't you want better than that? I know where the key to that box is hidden. I gestured to the elaborate dowry box under the seat opposite us. I'd be happy to give it to you if you'll let me have that little traipse through the forest. You could pull a big handful of jewelry out of there and be gone before anyone knows better. He let out a sound that was halfway between a snort and a chuckle.
Not interested.
So you're content playing 2-bit gopher to some forest bandit? Look at you. Surely you're meant for better things than that. That one seemed to strike home, and his eyes narrowed. He reached out and grabbed my chin, pinching it none too gently between his thumb and forefingers as he stared angrily down at me.
Look, Princess, I'm not having a great day. Yeah, I'd like to be out there having fun, but instead I've been put on babysitting duty. So here's a tip. We're not here for your jewels and fancy dresses. We're here for you.
His aggression was the last straw for me. I slapped his wrist to the side and attempted to launch myself past him to the freedom outside the open door. But faster than my mind could even process what had happened, I found myself pressed back against the carriage seat, my arms pinned to my side. He was bent down over me, laughing.
Now that's more like it.
I ignored the part of my mind that couldn't figure out how he'd move so quickly. Instead, I let out a growl and tried in vain to struggle free. My struggle was soon interrupted by 3 oddly spaced knocks sounding against the carriage door. I stilled, realizing that the sounds of fighting from outside had ceased. My captor's expression turned serious as he gave me an order.
Lift the hatch.
He was too smart to move his arm and do it himself, opening himself up to another escape attempt. He barely loosened his grip enough to let me move my own right arm. With a sigh, I followed his instruction. He kicked the door open, still holding me securely. I turned my head and peered out the open door at the man standing outside. Based on his bold posture and confident half-smirk, this was most certainly the boss. Dressed in expensive-looking leathers, he approached me with the brashness of a bandit and the grace of a nobleman. This experience was getting stranger every minute. Every time you went to take a shit.
Hello, my lady. Robin of Locksley at your service. Well, what in blazes are you doing? She's a handful, boss.
Now my captor sounded more fretful than threatening, but he still wouldn't loosen his grip on me.
Let me guess, you told her nothing. Figured you'd prefer to do the honors.
The man called Robin turned his attention back to me, fixing his face in a welcoming smile. He placed one foot on the carriage step and held out a hand to assist me.
Sorry about my cousin, Lady Marion. I'm afraid there's not much time to explain, but never fear.
Never fear? When they were here for me? When they knew my name? I could see 2 of my guards over the affable Robin of Locksley's shoulder. They were knocked out and tied together at the side of the road. I glared at the hand outstretched towards me as I tried to gather my thoughts.
Oh, for Shadow's sake. Huh?
With that, Will tossed me unceremoniously at his boss. I let out a pathetic squeak of surprise as I tumbled out of the carriage. But when Robin caught me in his arms, I exploded into a flurry of thrashing limbs and angry punches. I heard Theo yelling for me to run, but I couldn't manage to struggle free. This man's lithe look was belied by the strength of his grip. He had held me tight while dodging my attacks.
Hey, no, wait, not the eyes. My, you are a handful.
He was laughing, the jerk.
Sorry, cuz I think this will make things easier.
Mr. Temper had apparently fetched a few lengths of rope. With the same unnatural speed I'd seen earlier, he tied my feet together, then my wrists. Robin let out a frustrated sigh as I wriggled ineffectually in his arms.
This is not the way to treat a lady, Will. Not my fault she doesn't act like one.
I'm sorry, I usually don't act like a lady when I'm being actively kidnapped.
And we do need to get out of here before that one gets free and causes trouble.
He jerked his thumb back toward the carriage. I turned my head and saw Theo tied to one of the wheels, struggling angrily against his bonds. Several men dressed similarly to Robin were stowing weapons and mounting great stags before riding them off into the forest. I didn't see anybody trying to loot the carriage itself, an odd fact that occupied my mind until I was distracted by the sound of flapping wings. A large dove nearly smacked me in the head before landing on Will's shoulder. It pecked him several times and he swore softly.
We need to get out of here, now.
Robin nodded. The two rushed over to a large horse and worked together to hoist me over the saddle. Robin hopped on behind me as I hung there on my belly like a sack of potatoes.
Now, if we untie you, will you promise not to struggle?
At risk falling off the back of a horse? I may have been hopping mad, but I wasn't stupid. I nodded and Will came around to the other side, cutting my bonds without a comment. Robin helped me up and settled me in front of him in the saddle. His chest pressed against my back as he reached for the reins. It was far too close for comfort. It was strange, though. He didn't stink like most bandits did. Actually, was that cologne I smelled? Robin spurred the horse into a trot down a deer track that led deeper into the forest. I looked angrily back at my new captor, hoping he'd be more forthcoming than the last one.
Who are you? Why are you kidnapping me?
You stole my line, you brat.
It's not a kidnapping, it's a rescue, milady.
What kind of rescue involves tying someone up and carting her into the forest without a by your leave? He chuckled, not looking the least bit repentant.
A certain damsel in distress wasn't giving us the benefit of the doubt. A shame, really. Now hush. We're making a getaway from folk who would actually do you harm. And not that mouth. And that mouth of yours is far too pretty to gag.
I didn't think he was serious about gagging me, but only raised my ire. I wanted to smack him so badly.
I would have bit him by now.
Right? Instead, I let my shoulders sink in humiliation. All those years, training with the sword, fighting off bandits and raids from neighboring holdings. I thought I was strong, but these men had made off me as easily as if I'd been a tiny child. What was going to happen to me now? We rode in silence through the endless green enchantment of Sherwood Forest. Occasionally, Will would pull up beside us in his great stag, communicating with Robin via hand signs. Eventually, we slowed a bit, and I saw a new great stag trot up behind us. Riding it was one of the largest men I'd ever seen. He was definitely Sundatai, though dressed similarly to Robin rather than in the colorful garments most of his merchant countrymen wore. Robin smiled and hailed him softly.
What's the news? All clear.
The large man nodded genially to me and pulled up beside us as both our mounts slowed to a walk.
Hello, Lady Marion. I'm John, Robin's second. It's good to meet you.
Unlike Will, he had a noticeable accent. I couldn't help but think it pleasant, hearing those round vowels in his deep voice. I found myself smiling back at him briefly before checking myself and schooling my features back into a frown. Hello, John. You seem like a reasonable fellow. Would you mind asking this barbarian here to take me back to my carriage? Both John and Robin chuckled at that, though something about John's manner told me there was no mockery in his laughter.
Never fear, we're almost there. Then we can have a nice talk, no? Of course, that was my plan all along.
I didn't want to have a nice talk. I wanted to get away from the oddest bandits in Avalon, and not much later, I saw my possible salvation appear on the horizon, a bridge across the river. If I could keep Robin from holding me on the horse, I could jump into the river and swim to freedom. Now was the perfect time to grab my boot dagger. I reached one arm down as subtly as I could, pretending I needed to scratch an itch.
Looking for your dagger, my lady. I'm afraid I already have it. I do like a good boot dagger, though.
What? Where did that happen? Probably when they'd been hoisting me onto the horse. Blat this man. I turned my head back to him and retorted angrily, without thinking. Really? What would you do with one? I imagine a man who has to go around abducting women can't be very skilled at using his dagger. Oops. Still, his face merely twitched for a second before he moved in close to my ear and murmured.
Care to test that theory? Just say the word and be happy to give a demonstration.
I think you're talking about his penis.
I think he was.
He'd spoken that as an invitation, not a threat, but I refused to be lured in by this charming bastard. We tell him
Oh, clever retort.
Offer up a clever retort. Certainly, I'll test that theory. Just bring me one of your 5 angriest former lovers. I'm sure they'd be happy to tell me all about it. Robin's aggravating smirk opened up into a genuine laugh.
I think I'm going to like you very much, Lady Marion.
Not if I couldn't help it. I kept one eye on the approaching bridge. The river looked suitably deep. Good. It was time to improvise. Well, perhaps I could be persuaded not to find you entirely appalling. I smiled slightly at him and reached for his hand, keeping eye contact as I brought it toward my lips. He looked rather pleased by this development. Almost there. Thank goodness his feet were the ones in the stirrups. 3, 2, 1. I kissed the back of his hand, then immediately bit down hard on the skin between his thumb and forefinger. He yelped and yanked his hand back by instinct.
That's right. Bite that asshole.
Hand.
I swung my left leg over the saddle and launched myself off the horse into the river. Oof! I did not have the opportunity to dive in gracefully, and was hit with a dual shock of the cold, rushing water and pain of my poor angle of entry. For one terrifying second, my body refused to move. Through sheer force of will, I got my arms working and managed to get my head above water. Then I tried to turn my thrashing arms into actual swimming stroke. That's when I realized a critical flaw in my escape plan. I was wearing a well-made velvet dress, which was becoming waterlogged and heavy. It was all I could do to keep from going under the river's swift current, as the river's swift current dragged me along. I managed to kick off my boots, but there was no way for me to get out of this dress and stay afloat at the same time. My arms began to tire and I started to panic. That's probably why I didn't notice the large figure directly in front of me. I collided with a solid chest and was swept into the arms of the large man called John. No, not after everything. He cradled me in his arms like a precious child, but I was too distraught to notice that he was taking good care of me. Rot great stags for being swifter than a rushing river. Rot this man for being so tall that he could simply stand in the river and wait for me to come to him. As he plodded inexorably toward the shore, I punched, kicked, and even tried to bite. It was like fighting a stone. Finally, as we emerged and our wet bodies splashed the water along the shoreline, I collapsed. It was all too much. I didn't know who these men were or what they wanted from me, or wanted me for. I just knew that all my strength and intelligence had been no match for them. My exhaustion, fear, anger, and humiliation poured out of me in racking sobs. John stopped and sat down at the base of the large tree. He let me cry myself out in patient silence, patting my soaked back soothingly. Later I would notice that he'd even removed my jewelry for me, as it had been tangled in my wet hair. Eventually, I lifted my head, unsure if there were still tears streaming down my face or if this was just water falling from my hair.
They were a bit rough with you, no? I am so sorry. They mean well. We don't wish to harm you.
I gave a long, shuddering sigh. Why? What do you want with me?
We heard you were coming, and we thought that you probably don't know the truth about the man you're meant to marry, Lord Woodthorpe. Ah, the sheriff, they call him. We wanted to tell you what he's like, and to help you get away if you wanted.
Oh. Then why in all the shadows had they not simply told me that in the first place? I took a deep breath to avoid screaming that question at this kind man. He had rescued me from drowning, and then he had taken time to care for me and, at least partially, answer my questions.
Will you come with me? I won't leave you alone in the forest. But I promise you that you will not be kept against your will once we tell you what you need to know.
He seemed like my best hope in the situation. I didn't have much choice but to decide to trust him, for now. I nodded. With a gentle smile, he stood up and helped me to my feet as well. He then took a look down at me and removed his sodden cloak.
It's wet, but you might want to, well,
I looked down at myself. The neck of my dress had stretched considerably, and my breasts were almost exposed. Yikes.
That's you.
I accepted his cloak with as much regality as I could, wrapping the large garment around myself. It fell down past my knees.
I should probably carry you. Here.
He kneeled down and held out his arms so that I could walk into them, willingly this time.
Thank you, but I can walk on my own.
John looked at me with concern written clearly across his face.
You want to walk? Like that?
I realized that I'd kicked my boots off in the river and was currently barefoot, but I made a bold proclamation I didn't want to back down from it. I'll manage. I used to run barefoot all over Glastonbury as a child. John grimaced and took me to stay put for a moment. He walked over to his waiting greatstag and took a knife and blanket out of his pack. He cut several long strips from the blanket and motioned for me to sit down on a nearby rock. I did so, trying not to wince as various small pebbles poked at the bottoms of my feet. John took each of my feet in his hands, dried them off with the remaining blanket, and then wrapped wide strips around my feet. He tied them up with narrow strips until I had two extremely makeshift shoes. Better than nothing, I was pretty sure. I thanked him and we started walking side by side back along the bank. He spoke up after a few moments.
I'm sorry about my brother. He can be difficult, but he's a good kid underneath.
Oh, Will? You don't look...
Half brother technically, but a true brother to me.
He sighed heavily.
I'm hoping he'll figure himself out one of these days, but never mind that.
I nodded, and soon the only noises I heard were the rushing river and the wet squishing sounds we made as we walked. I had no idea how far I had been swept down the river during my brief struggle, but it turned out that it wasn't particularly far at all. I tried not to let that thought get me down too much, especially since I was beginning to shiver in my wet clothes. We approached the bridge, where Will had joined Robin. I gave them a sour look.
Thank the light. What took you two so long?
Will merely smirked at me. Sorry.
Nice boots.
If I could have stared literal daggers into him right now, I would have.
Leave her be, Will. We're almost there now, Lady Marion. Ah, yes. Shall I help you onto the horse, milady?
It was tempting, but...
No more horses.
Stealing my lines. I actually don't mind. I shrank back toward John, who had shown me nothing but kindness. The hurt look on Robin's face gave me a bit of satisfaction. With that, Will and Robin led the way further into the forest. I stubbornly plodded along behind them in my makeshift shoes, glad that at least a small part of me was dry. John stayed at my side, watching me with concern. It was a miserable trek. I could feel every rock under my feet, and my drenched undergarments had begun to ride up into unmentionable places.
Ugh.
Still, I kept my head high, refusing to show any more weakness in front of these men.
Or these nuts.
Sometime later, the trees cleared a bit, and I noticed we were walking towards a steep mountain wall. What now? As we got close to the mountain, Robin stepped in front of the group, gesturing like a showman.
This is the best part.
John took my hand and gently pulled me along as we walked right into the mountain. I balked.
Close your eyes. It's easier the first time.
I mean, phrasing? I'm taking a sip. Oh, why not? I squeezed him shut and walked forward with his guidance. My stomach began to flip with worry when I realized we should have run into a rock face some time ago. Still, we kept walking. I squeezed my eyes shut as tightly as possible and prayed for the shadow's protection.
All right, you can open them now.
I did, and what I saw in front of me nearly defied description. Robin grinned as she showed off the absolutely impossible camp we'd wandered into.
Lady Marion of Glastonbury, welcome to the headquarters of the rebellion against your fiancé.
It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. If I thought that Sherwood was an enchanted place, this valley practically glowed with the magic of the Fae. This was the kind of secret forest glen I'd read about in accounts written by a few humans who had wandered into Fairy and managed to return with their sanity intact. A huge clearing stretched out in front of me, but it was not the kind of cleared land you'd see in human settlement. Sure, the stony fire pit in the front of me wasn't unusual, but beyond that, the landscape was dotted with cottages that had literally been grown from the earth. Every building in this camp was constructed of living trees, with hardly a sign of tool or use or other human construction to be found. This camp had to have been directly created by the Fae. No druid had the power to command plants in such a manner. Who were these people? Who had captured me? I tore my eyes from the sight and opened my mouth to ask a question of Robin, when we were interrupted by a loud shout.
Light above and shadow below, what did you boys do to this poor lass?
A thoroughly ordinary middle-aged woman bustled over to us, looking quite cross.
Ah, Nell, meet Lady Marion, who... Yes, time for that later. Come, my lovely, let's get you cleaned up and out of wee Johnny's cloak.
She grabbed my hand and I giggled at the reference to wee Johnny. Sheer exhaustion mixed with wonder at this magical place had made me compliant. My new acquaintance chatted at me as she pulled me along through the camp, leaving my speechless abductors behind. Apparently, they knew better than to intervene.
I'm Nell, the tailor for this rowdy bunch. Used to have a shop in Nottingham, and I paid my taxes right and all. But then the sheriff's men started asking for even more money for protection, they said. From them, more like. I held them off until they said they'd burn the shop down.
See, I told you it was mafia.
Now I'm here, thrown in with this lot.
That's awful. I'm Marion. Kidnapped, I guess. Nell caught the sarcastic look on my face and chuckled. We left the main camp and were walking on a flower-lined dirt path toward what sounded like a waterfall.
You'll be all right, my lovely. We'll get you cleaned up and the boys can tell you what they're all about. You'll be needing some new clothes, methinks. I hope you don't mind tunic and trousers. I have some small ones I can take in right quick.
Oh, thank you, that's just fine. In truth, I'd always wondered what it would be like to dress like a man, so I was delighted by Nell's lack of deference to my nobility. Perhaps she hadn't heard Robin's aborted introduction, and didn't even know my status? I decided not to enlighten her. As we walked along, the crashing sound of the waterfall became louder. Nell stopped in front of a cleverly designed sign with male and female symbols painted onto it. A wooden arrow perched on top of the sign, and she moved it over to the female symbol. We moved on, and the forest cleared to reveal a gorgeous waterfall basin. Nell smiled to see my obvious pleasure at the scene, then tugged me along to the water's edge until we reached a warm, steamy cave off to the side of the falls. Ooh, hot tub.
Hot tub, hot tub.
The walls were lined with glowing fairy worms, and I caught a whiff of rotten eggs in the air. We passed into the large cavern, and the steamy pools I saw there made me exclaim in delight. Hot springs! I'd never seen hot springs before. They were a bit smelly, but their warmth beckoned to my shivering, weary body.
If I ever saw a lass who needed a hot spring, it's you. Will you stay put for old Nell a while?
Gladly. I was done running. I didn't know if it was possible to find a way out of this magical valley on my own, and my energy was thoroughly spent. Besides, I was now far too curious about this Fae-touched place to want to leave it just yet. Nell pulled a tape from her apron pockets and did some quick measurements. She then left, and I stripped and soaked away at my stressful day. Spa day. A pile of towels had been helpfully left by the springs, along with a veritable banquet of herbal medicines and poultices.
Girl, she gonna need it for them feet.
Right? My poor abused feet were beginning to blister, so I rummaged through the poultices and found a muscle-wart wrap. That would fix them right up, along with a nice soak. Sometime later, Nell returned to find me stretched out and asleep on a towel, luxuriantly naked in a warm cavern. She woke me and presented me with my new clothes. The boots didn't fit quite right, but she promised they were temporary. Not bad. I stretched curiously, feeling the trousers move against my legs. If nothing else, this attire was a new kind of adventure for me. After some quick hair detangling, I felt worlds better. I was ready to face my captors, or rescuers, as they would have me believe. Once I was fully changed and ready, Nell showed me to my guest cabin, where a somewhat subdued Robin was waiting for me. I sat down across from him on a surprisingly sturdy mushroom stool. Robin's eyes widened when he took in my attire.
Milady, oh, I'm so sorry. We can find you something more fitting.
No, please. This is quite comfortable. Never mind that. What is all this? I gestured to the furniture and the Fay-grown cabin in general.
It's a bit of a tale, but I'd like you to hear it. Peace?
He held out his hand, then pulled it back slightly in mock concern. Apparently peace sounds like Xbox party disconnection.
If you'd keep your teeth to yourself this time, I will bite you again. Don't fucking...
This time not on the hand.
I wanted to give him
I
an
will
earful
Mike
about
Ty-
the way he treated me thus far.
I'll bite you like Mike Tyson.
And yet, his unexpected sincerity, along with his natural charm, lowered my defenses. I suppose there was no real harm in hearing him out, as long as you behave. I gave him an uneasy smile, which he returned readily, looking relieved. Then he sat back and began his tale.
I hope you'll excuse me. I'll have to be serious for a moment. It's not my forte.
Hold just a minute. I'm just muting the noise so nobody has to hear that garbage.
Well, it shouldn't happen again.
Shouldn't. Okay, go ahead.
I just talked.
Well, talk some more, damn it. I nodded.
2 years ago, John and I returned from the war to find out that Nottingham was a right mess. My father was killed by Nibirians. Nibiria is the third country. So I was the new Lord of Locksley Holding, northeast of Nottingham.
I'm so sorry. He bowed his head briefly in acknowledgement of my sympathy.
So yes, you know about Prince John and his taxes. And I know we have debts to pay, but here in Nottingham and the holdings nearby, it hasn't been fair at all. I'm afraid my fellow nobles have been pushing all the burden onto crafters and merchants, even onto farmers and other serfs. They're hurting while we feast in our manors.
Despicable.
Indeed, and so a year ago, there was a rebellion planned in Nottingham. The old Lord Nottingham was awful, a vain, greedy tyrant. I know I should have just looked to my own holding, but that was never my family's way. I helped fund the rebellion, gave them places to meet, decided I'd help them fight, though I didn't want to take Nottingham for myself. It might have worked too, but someone betrayed me too. The rebels were gathered in Sherwood, and I was about to join them to march on Nottingham. Before I could, Lord Joffrey of Woodthorpe showed up at my door with an arrest warrant for sedition. It was signed by Prince John himself.
Lord Joffrey, the man I was supposed to marry. Things are starting to come together now.
I learned later that Lord Nottingham and his guard had ambushed the rebellion on the edge of Sherwood Forest.
His face twisted into a look of grief and regret.
It was a bloodbath. If only I had been there, maybe I could have.
He shook his head.
But I wasn't there. The only good thing to come of it was that Nottingham and his son were killed, leaving no heirs. Prince John and his personal army rode into Nottingham as fast as they could, declared martial law, destroyed the guilds, even those that had refused to take part in the rebellion.
Ah, good old martial law.
Then he installed Joffrey of Woodthorpe as provisional lord of Nottingham. Folk called Joffrey the sheriff, since he seemed more lawman than lord.
Robin took a cleansing breath and saw the usual light begin to return to his eyes.
As for me, my dear cousins John and Will sought to free me from prison. They met an ex-druid called Tuck, who helped them break who helped them break me out on the condition that we assist him with some sort of mysterious quest he's on. He claims to be working on behalf of the Rose King and the Wolf Queen.
The Fey Lords of Sherwood? That's impossible. Ever since the signing of the pact, the Fey had never recruited humans to do their bidding.
And yet, you believe your eyes, do you not?
He gestured around at the impossible cabin and the impossible camp. It was true. I had no better explanation. I like that they turned Friar Tuck into a druid.
A sexy, sexy red-haired druid.
I'd like to speak with this Tuck. Speaking of.
Yeah,
That's because you haven't met him yet.
he's a cross-dresser. He tucks it back.
Anyhow, this camp was prepared for us. Tuck uses his considerable powers to assist our cause, and in return we shelter him, feed him, and we don't ask too many questions. We have our own problems. Things didn't get better in Nottingham after the sheriff took over. They got worse. Joffrey's guard is thoroughly corrupt. I'm sure Nell told you her story.
I nodded.
She's not alone. A good half of the folk here are crafters or merchants who were turned out of their homes by the guard. And many of the rest faced worse, indentured servitude if they're caught holding money back or simply can't afford to pay their taxes in the first place.
I inhaled deeply in shock. But that's practically slavery.
Indeed, and conditions worsen every day in Nottingham's poor districts, with hardly anyone hiring labor anymore. That's where we come in.
How are you acting on all of that from here?
I won't lie, it's been rough for us. Joffrey has the soldiers, the weapons, the money, and the power. But we have one thing he'll never be able to take from us.
A ridiculous amount of optimism?
The power of public opinion.
Just running off vibes, bro. He paused for effect and noted the skepticism written across my face. Putting on a particularly charming smile, he leaned in like a bard telling a children's tale.
What do the people long for most when the times are tough?
Proper food and shelter?
Of course, but they need more than that. They need a hero to give them hope. A powerful man who is on their side. One they can rally around as we rally to King Richard in the war. They say heroes come from the light, right? But what happens when those in the light are Venal and wicked? That's when your hero has to come from the shadows. An outlaw hero.
What do? Sneak into Nottingham and give inspiring speeches? He laughed.
We protect them from the sheriff's goons. We rescue those who have been indentured. Best of all, we steal from the rich and give to the poor.
Yeah. You're philanthropic bandits?
Exactly, and let me tell you, the sheriff's infuriated by us. More folk are joining our cause every day, and hopefully we'll soon have enough for a real rebellion.
This is really starting to sound like an infomercial with this music. Now, with 3 easy payments of $89.99.99, you too can become a rebellious scamp in the woods. I had to admit, his enthusiasm and strength of will were infectious, even if I wasn't entirely sure whether he was a genius or a madman.
But that aside, Lady Marion, we have a spy in the sheriff's manor, and when she told us about you, we knew we had to rescue you from a future with that man. I would also like to say you can't date Joffrey in this game.
Why would you want to? He sounds like a real scumbag.
From Robin's perspective, but we haven't heard his side of the story yet.
Where Robin is causing all kinds of chaos?
Let's just say there's stuff going on in the background. There's a third element here.
Okay.
And now that I've met you, well, you're brave, intelligent, and beautiful. He doesn't deserve a woman like you.
I'm so glad you decided that for me. I love it. So what would you bid me to do now that I'm your prisoner instead? I may have said that in a more pointedly than necessary, but the way they rescued me still stung.
Now that you've heard the truth about Lord Joffrey, you're free to leave at any time. We'll help you return to your father if you like. I assume he'll agree to break your engagement to a man who cannot even protect his own roads from bandits?
You're probably right.
You may even keep your engagement, not that I'd recommend it, of course. There's a price to be paid if that's your choice. We'll have to ransom you to him dearly.
He gave me a challenging look, one that I returned with equal heat. Let me think on it.
Very well.
He rose and stretched.
You may stay with us in this cabin as long as you wish. Dinner will be served shortly, and I believe the lads have a small welcome celebration planned for you.
Indeed. Then let's see what entertainment the bandits of Sherwood can provide. I took Robin's proffered arm, and he escorted me back to the center of the camp, where a rustic but well-prepared meal had been laid out upon rough-hewn stone tables. A lot of fucking vocab words in this game. Robin's company of rebels numbered some 30 members, largely men. They were dressed similarly too, though more simply than their leader. All eyes turned to us as we approached the central camp. Robin cleared his throat and spoke out in a clear voice of an experienced leader.
My fine fellows, may I introduce you to Lady Marion of Glastonbury, who will be our guest for some time.
The assembled rebels applauded me politely.
I hope you will treat her with all due respect and demonstrate to her that we are finer folk than Lord Joffrey's court of vipers.
A cheer rose at that proclamation. Robin smiled to see it, then gestured for their attention once more.
I trust you all have your duties for the morrow. Please see Master John if you need further instruction. Rebels of Sherwood, we hold the line. Until when? Until
Let's
King
go,
Richard
returns! I felt that one needed more voices.
Long live King Richard.
Long live King Richard!
And now we eat, drink, and make merry.
His speech complete, Robin led me to a table away from the main hurly-burly of the feasting rebels. Hurly-burly? There's going to be a test after this demo. King Richard, You believe he lives? A shadow crossed his face at my question. But he shook it off quickly and returned to his usual winning smile on me.
Naturally, I know him, my lady. We became acquainted during the war. His leadership brought us safely through that conflict, yes, but he's so much more than a war hero. He believes, as do I, that things need to change in Avalon. The people need more control over their own destiny. Cruel and greedy lords must be unseated. He will return. He must return. But that's enough of that. Shall we speak of merrier things? Of course.
Of course. Of ships and seals and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings. There was more I wished to ask, but Robin seemed to be a man inclined towards joviality, despite his dearly held convictions. I let him steer the dinner conversation. He was a perfectly charming companion, and I was feeling quite relaxed by the time the sun was dipping below the horizon. Rebels had begun pulling out instruments and clearing space in the middle of the camp. A young man trotted over to Robin and whispered something in his ear. He nodded and placed a hand on my shoulder.
I'll be back soon, milady. Milady.
Oh, milady. I was left alone as the sun set, sitting on the edge of the growing festivities. The rebels had been directing curious gazes at me for some time, but were keeping a respectful distance. I suppose that even these outlaws respected the barriers between commoners and nobility, so I scanned the crowd for familiar faces. Several men were building up a bonfire in the fire pit, and those who had brought some instruments were tuning up. I spotted John amongst them, sitting with an unusual drum between his legs. It took a bit longer to find Will, who was leaning against a tree on the edge of the clearing, arms and legs crossed.
So, what are we thinking? We could wait for Robin, but we've talked to Robin a lot.
Yeah, we have.
We could talk to John, who's the nicest, or we could talk to Will, who's a little shit.
I mean, I kind of want to throw Will in the fucking river at this point.
I feel like that, like, his route is just him and Marion just, like slap fighting
Rivals
each
to
other.
lovers kind of situation.
Rivals to lovers. That is his route.
What do you think, Megan?
I gotta say, John's my favorite so far. Like, Robin Hood's very showboaty, and Will's kind of a little shit. Will needs to earn his route.
Yeah. I approached the musicians, and John greeted me with a wide smile. It was a wonderful smile, warm and welcoming. He patted the stone bench next to him, and I sat. He's a cinnamon roll. I nearly gathered my skirts around me out of habit when I realized I was wearing trousers. Rather handy, these things. Hey, fucking men, sister!
It is good to take some time for merriment, no?
I had had precious little of that since I took over my father's holding, so I nodded in hearty agreement. The fiddlers began a reel, so John turned to his drum, and I watched in fascination as he coaxed a variety of sounds out of it depending on how he slapped the skin with his hand. I'd never seen a drum besides the Avalon bodhrán, which was hit with a stick. I want to say djembe.
It's called a djembe. So the country that Will and John are from is based off West Africa, I
Okay.
want to say. Just throwing that one out there.
He explained to me as he played a steady rhythm.
I learned to play it as a boy and had a Sinjati trader bring it to me in Nottingham. It is good to have something to remind me of home.
It is. I like it. I wondered how John had come to Avalon, but this noisy party wasn't a good time to ask. Instead, I sat back and enjoyed the music. Soon the group was playing a popular ballad that I knew, and I began to sing along under my breath.
Don't be shy, sing out.
Oh, you don't want to hear me. I have terrible singing voice.
Nonsense, everyone should sing.
All right, you asked for it. I sang a bit louder, self-consciously. I'd always been told that although I can sing on key, my voice was too shrill and harsh. After the song, John beamed over at me. His handsome face, illuminated by the bonfire, was like a cool drink of water.
You have a wonderful voice.
Fucking supportive as shit. I love it.
I love him.
Don't lie. I know it's not very good. He looked at me seriously, and I realized that this man didn't have an insincere bone in his body.
But I like it. Your voice is strong and clear, like a hawk.
So, I'm a hawk, am I? I suppose I can be a bit carnivorous. I deflected the compliment out of embarrassment, but John gave me a mischievous smile.
I don't mind that either.
I felt a blush creep into my cheeks. I should really think more before I open my mouth, but John merely turned back to his drum for the next song. Robin eventually returned to the party and whisked me away for a dance or two, but I always found myself returning to John's side. His gentle company made me feel safe and comfortable. Eventually the fire was banked down, and the rebels returned to their cabins and longhouses. John bade me wait a moment and returned with 2 small lanterns that shone with an unearthly blue glow. Are those will-o'-the-wisps? I gazed in the lanterns in wonder. Will-o'-the-wisps were malevolent half-faced spirits that were far more likely to lead humans astray than help them. John shrugged his large shoulders.
You'll have to ask Tuck how he tamed them. They're very useful when your home is made of living wood.
John showed me back to my cabin and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder.
My cabin is right over there if you need anything at all. I'll leave my lantern outside so you can find it.
Thank you. You've been so kind, and I might be washed up dead right now if it weren't for you.
It's not worth mentioning, but I'm glad I could help. Have a good sleep, Lady Marion.
You too, John. The soft smile he gave me before he turned away stuck in my mind for some time. Inside my cabin, I plopped the lantern down on the wood burl table and collapsed onto the bed. There were night clothes on my size sitting at the end of the bed. That must have been what Nell was doing during the party. I wondered what the expected exchange was for favors done by a person who wasn't one's vassal. I never faced such a transaction before. Work done either out of obligation or for currency. The question would have to wait for the morning. I shrugged out of my day clothes and into the night ones, then buried myself beneath the blankets. I stared at the blue light across the way. What do you think the blankets are made of?
That time period, probably wool?
Would the Fae be chill with that?
You don't kill a sheep for wool, you just shear it.
Okay.
It's like getting a haircut.
Yeah. How exactly do I douse a magic lantern?
You ask it politely.
I spoke to myself, but the floating orbs blinked softly, then went out. Well, that was that then. Sleep claimed me in an instant. I was awakened by birdsong and mottled light beaming through my window. It took me a few moments to get oriented, but as my mind ran over where I was and how I'd come to be here. Right then. It was time to get to it. What exactly was I going to do now? I was in a good position to negotiate for my own freedom with my father. If Robin of Locksley was as good as his word, and I suspected he was, I'd have assistance and shelter while I extricated myself from my engagement. On the other hand, who was to say that my father wouldn't simply begin looking for another nobleman upon whom to pawn me off? And was becoming a good lady of a hold truly what I wanted out of life? Just months ago, it was the only future I could have seen. But today, I was starting to get an idea. A crazy, dangerous idea that would turn my entire life upside down. It felt like a new door was opening to me if only I were brave and reckless enough to walk through it. I'd always thought of myself as an eminently sensible person. Was it time to throw away that identity, or time to reclaim it? I had a sense that Robin would keep his promise of a safe return if I desired it, and yet before me stood a grand adventure that could change my life for good or for ill. Are we joining the rebellion?
I don't think this... Actually, click the quill pen. Okay, you can save. Do me a favor. Just hit a save right now. Go back. I just want to see what negotiate with my father for my safe return home ends up with. Because I'm curious. Like, obviously we're going to join the rebellion.
I decided to take Robin up on his offer to have me return safely home. It only took a few letters for my father to agree to cancel my engagement, especially once he learned of the harsh measures that Lord Joffrey was taking against his subjects. Father even wrote a letter of complaint to Prince John, although we never received a reply. I've been home in Glastonbury since, helping my stepmother learn more about Avalon's householding. Chagrined by his over-hasty arrangement with Joffrey of Woodthorpe, my father has agreed that I'll be able to make the social circuit next year in search of a better match. Despite its rocky start, my short adventure in Sherwood Forest is now a fond memory. I worry for the people I met there, though. Traveling bards had begun singing tales of bloody conflicts in Nottingham town, and strange happenings in Sherwood Forest. If one were to believe the very strangest tales, there have even been greater fae sighted by normal folk there, and they were not friendly. I hope Robin and his compatriots are all right, and that light and shadow can find balance once again in Nottingham. As for me, it's just as well that I decide to return home to the safety of my father's small country holding.
Okay, now we can hit load.
The end. Eminently sensible.
I just wanted to know what would happen. Oh, no, don't overwrite your save.
No. Load. Load, you bitch.
Yes.
Join
I don't
our
want to be
rebellion,
sensible.
baby. True, Robin and his friends might have been a bit barmy, but had my own goals in mind. If this rebellion succeeded, I'd have personally assisted Nottingham's new leaders. That was an excellent position to be in. Besides, I didn't have to stick around if things looked like they were going south, and in the meantime, I had a place from which I could figure out what I wanted for my future, save for my father's intervention. Mind made up, I strode confidently out of my cabin and spotted Robin and his lieutenant sitting around a stone table some distance away.
That is Leighton Tuck, right there, dead center.
Ooh.
Instead of Friar Tuck, we get Fuckboy Tuck.
Ha! Nice. They looked up at me as I approached, but I took my time, taking a seat and smiling pleasantly at them. I learned from bitter experience that the first step to being taken seriously was to act as though my inclusion was a matter of course. Robin and John looked at me with a cheerful expectation. Will appeared uninterested, idly carving a block of wood with a small, sharp knife. But the final face of the table was the one that drew my attention. This new man looked more like a bandit than anyone I'd met the day before. His rusty red hair was artfully disheveled, as well as his dark-hued outfit. He had several days' beard growth and some obvious scars on his face. There was a rugged handsomeness about him that drew the eye. He sat down the wine goblet that he'd been idly swirling and put out his hand.
Leighton Tuck, resident druid.
He sat simply, taking my hand and shaking it firmly instead of kissing it. I raised my eyebrows and heard Robin chuckle.
As well-mannered as always, pray forgive him, my lady. He doesn't have the proper respect for any of his betters. If I ever meet any of my betters, Locksley, I'll be sure to summon some respect.
Nice. That longer utterance betrayed a Stenish accent. Interesting. It wasn't often that somebody made it to this side of the wall. Robin's mysterious druid was becoming more and more of a puzzle.
So, Avalon is like Britain,
Yeah.
and the Stenish is like Ireland. They're on the other side where the Fae are. There's like a wall separating them. Yes, yes. Anyhow, Lady Marion, you look like you have something to say.
Yes, I've decided what I want to do next. I took a breath. I'd like to join your rebellion. A hush fell around the table. Robin looked cautiously pleased, and Leighton appeared thoughtful or scheming. It was difficult to tell. John seemed concerned, while Will looked angry for some reason. After a beat, Robin broke the silence.
I will fist fight Will. Like, well now, this is unexpected news, but welcome news all the same. We'll be sure to take very good care of you, Lady Marion.
Okay.
God, that man has to be like 6'8".
I'm gonna climb that motherfucker like a tree.
I'd like you to know that I'm 5'6", and if he's 6'8", that puts me directly in the center.
6'8". Woo! Wee John ain't so wee.
That would put my face directly in the middle of his pectorals.
Oh, boosh! You gonna motorboat them man boobies?
I only know this because I know someone who's 6'8", and when I'm standing next to him, I am just at mid-chest level.
Nice. Nice, too.
Wait, are you too serious? What can she possibly contribute? She's a lady. She doesn't have a trade. She doesn't have...
I cut him off with a cross look. This was the moment I've been waiting for. I may have failed to show my worth on the road yesterday, but now things were under my control. I'd be happy to show you what I can do. Would someone kindly fetch me a sword? Bitch. Chapter 2. My future in my own hands. That's what she said.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
Robin grinned.
Fancy a bit of sparring, do you? We can certainly arrange that.
He looked back at the brothers. Robin is such a fucking shit.
He is. Of course, this gives the nice young lady access to sharp objects. Worried what might happen to you, Will? Funny you should say that, cuz. Remind me what she did to you before going on her little swim?
Robin really smiled and turned back at me.
There you have it. No objections. We'll fetch the practice blades. Leighton, would you mind terribly showing Lady Marion to the practice field? Don't worry, my lady. He's relatively well behaved in daylight.
Leighton flashed me his wolfish smile.
I am the picture of chivalry. Come along, Dove. I didn't say fuckboy talk for no reason.
He led me to a large clearing in the middle of a magical valley. It was currently deserted, but it was set up with archery targets on one side and practice dummies on another. The small river meandered through the middle, providing a natural separation between the sides. It was far more pedestrian than the rest of the enchanted camp, which put me at ease. I knew what I was doing in this sort of setting. Leighton eased himself onto the ground, the picture of idle repose. His wine goblet was still in his hand, and he sipped from it before patting the ground next to him. He always got a fucking glass of wine in his hand. Is that one of his abilities? A summon wine?
Some Dionysian ass shit.
Right? I sat down a bit further away than he'd indicated. I hadn't exactly made a habit of sitting on the ground in the past, but I had a feeling it was going to be introduced to a great many more unusual things in the coming days. The druid smirked at my cautious approach, but didn't comment on it.
So, Dove, why do you decide you're cast to your lot in with us rebels?
I answered somewhat snappishly, annoyed by the nickname he'd unilaterally decided to bestow upon me. I simply judged that it was in my best interest to do so.
Then you're a woman after my own heart. But what could a gang of outlaws possibly have to offer you?
Plenty, should your rebellion succeed. Call it a calculated risk if you like.
Better than being married to a powerful, wealthy young lord. I get that he's half Moggy, but still.
Lord Joffrey was half Iberian? That was interesting and highly unusual. I didn't know that last part, actually. I simply didn't want the marriage in the first place. I never met the man.
A rebellious little lady, then, wants to control her own destiny. What would King Arthur think?
His snide tone was obvious. I suspected the Stenish didn't think much of my kingdom's exalted founder, considering he was the one who decided to lock them behind the wall. It's true that Arthur valued social order, but he also believed in bold action when necessary, and I can't say I'm entirely without sympathy for the rebellious Morgana. He laughed.
I like you. It's a shame you'll be sticking around, or I might be tempted to make a rather impertinent proposition.
That was a useless remark, and shit, I just lost the page. In which case, I offer a hypothetical refusal. He laughed again. I shook my head, far more interested in obtaining information from the man than indulging in such nonsense. Tell me, Druid Layton, what exactly do you do for this rebellion?
Oh, this and that, along with the local fae, I help keep the camp hidden from prying eyes.
So you're a midnight druid?
I am, and I am not.
What do you mean?
Watch.
He reached down and plucked a bud of a grass flower, which swiftly bloomed into his hand. Greenling plant magic. Then he blew on the flower and it disappeared. Cat said he midnight magic. Finally, he looked at me straight on, and I saw in his eyes flicker and yellow. His bare teeth began to lengthen, and his fingernails sharpened into claws. Wildling beast magic. All these things were elementary magics that could be produced by pack druids, but not all at once. Pack druids had an exclusive magical bond with a single fae. That's what the bond bracers were for. I'd assumed that Layton merely wore his bond bracer under his shirt, but if he lacked one entirely... At that revelation, I scuttled backward in fear. The old ways? Ancient outlawed magic, judged too powerful for human hands to wield after wicked druids had nearly torn the land asunder. Practicing the old ways was punishable by immediate death from either human or fae authorities. Even knowledge of how they worked had been scrubbed entirely from Avalon history.
I'm a true Stenish druid, Dove. You hadn't put one and one together yet.
Impossible! The Fae Lords!
Have agreed to allow his presence and practice in Sherwood.
The other three rebel leaders had arrived in the clearing, toting blunted practice weapons. I stood up and faced them, trembling with confusion. But does Nottingham know? How are you not...
What part of outlaws didn't you understand, Princess? If we upset your delicate sensibilities, I'll escort you back to your dear old daddy myself. Will. Don't get me wrong. I neither like nor trust this man, but it is what it is, even if I have to admit his talents are useful. Why, thank you, young sir.
The renegade druid stood and executed a mocking bow. Wait, but that means the Fae Lords of Sherwood have broken the pact. No, that was impossible. By the very nature, the Fae were bound by their oaths. That was the one reason humanity had given them so much power in the pact. They could be trusted to uphold it to the letter. So if the Fae had broken the pact, that meant that humanity had broken it first. Normally, any Avalon who broke the pact would simply be executed. The situation implied that something was wrong on a historic scale. For some reason, the Sherwood Fae had enlisted the help of a group of outlaws instead of the local druids and other human authorities. What in shadow could have caused such a breach of trust? My head spun and I felt my armpits dampen with sweat. Layton gave me a level look.
Aye, you're a clever lassie. I can see those water wheels spinning in your head, but you're getting naught else out of me. The Fae Lord's problems are their own, and it's best that the rest of you aren't involved. Good day, Dovey.
He strolled nonchalantly back toward the main camp.
So, Princess, what'll it be? Is this all too much for you?
I only paused for a moment. If something had caused the local Fae to break the pact, then all the more reason I should be involved. I could alert the authorities if I discovered that Nottingham was in danger. Besides, my pride and stubborn streak wouldn't allow me to back out. I squared my shoulders and stared at the three rebel leaders down. I'm still in. Who wants to test my blade?
Let's start with me. I'd like to see your forms, Marion.
The big man was holding an equally large quarterstaff. I'd never sparred against a quarterstaff wielder before. It was a bit intimidating, but I wasn't about to admit that.
What's your preference, milady?
He gestured at the pile of practice weapons he'd brought. Short sword and round shield, please. He handed me a serviceable, if rather dinged and dented set. The blunt sword wasn't balanced well and was a bit larger than what I was used to.
That's what she said.
I saw why John was giving me a chance to practice my forms before getting into the active sparring match, and I was grateful. I nodded to John and got into position. He held his staff out in front of him in a defensive posture.
It's ironwood, so don't worry that you'll damage it. Begin!
I stepped forward, just demonstrating a direct center body thrust. He deflected it neatly, bringing his staff up from below. I continued, right side strike. Left side strike. Right side feint, followed by central thrust. He blocked every predictable move with ease, demonstrating a grace that belayed his large size. After we'd gone through a bit of the basic forms, I lowered my blade and smiled at him. All right, your turn. I readied my shield to receive his attacks and demonstrate my defensive capabilities, but he shook his head.
I cannot attack you.
I sighed. It was hardly the first time I'd encountered a combatant who refused to fight me.
This is... What are we feeling, Ashlee?
You won't hurt me, I promise?
Yeah, the second one.
He gave me a gentle smile.
If I were an ordinary man, I'm sure that would be true. This will take a few moments, if you please.
Oh, sorry. He set his quarterstaff aside and I put my weapons down as well.
Do you see my eyes, how they are golden?
I nodded. Golden eyes were possessed only by the blessed bloodlines who had founded the Ammonite religion that dominated Sunjata.
I have a blessing from Amun, strength far greater than an ordinary man, but a blessing is a heavy responsibility, and each one comes with challenges. My brother has a blessing as well, but they work differently.
He gestured at Will, who nodded.
He can decide when to use his amazing speed. I cannot do the same with my strength. I have practiced for many years, working to make sure I do not hurt anybody by accident, but it is more difficult with weapons. I am very well trained, and my body can act before my mind can stop it. So I do not fight anybody unless I must.
Oh, is that why you fight with a staff instead of a blade?
It is. I hope only to knock out my opponent if I judge poorly.
You know, if he's supposed to be
I understand.
How the hell tall is Marion then?
I understand. Thank you for explaining.
Maybe 5'9".
Well, that's not the scale.
Yeah, because he's supposed to have almost a foot on her.
No, that's about a foot.
No, it isn't.
His head is a foot tall.
Eh. So
Probably a little more.
okay. So I'm going off the fact that one of my friends is 5'9" and her dad is 6'8".
Mm-hmm.
And like, her head's kind of at his chin. Though, in this, it could also be that they're on a hill. It could also be, you know, we don't actually know Kenan heights. I don't know if he's actually 6'8". I'm just, what is tall to Megan?
It's probably just for framing.
Yeah, it's probably just for framing.
But
We
still.
don't want his head cut off from the screen.
It's just the neck down. He's just pectorals. Can you pass me the dew? I need caffeine. And I want to take a fucking break.
Okay.
It's been a while since we did a game with this much visual novel aspect to it. We got spoiled with Date with Death as I fucking mug check my microphone. Now you're just gonna sit there and stare at me while I just rest?
What the fuck else am I supposed to do? Though another question
You're
nagged
not
at
even
me.
supposed to be here today.
No, today was our scheduled day, sir.
I'm not even
So,
supposed
Will
to be
has
here
blessings related to speed. That explains a lot about yesterday.
I only used it a couple times.
He spoke up sulkily. And what's the challenge that comes with your blessing? Being a little shit?
My brother might like to blab about his weaknesses, but do you think he uses up his body's source of energy very quickly.
John interrupted him genially.
Oh, fine. Yes, and I get very hungry.
Oh, that's why he's a cunt. Because he's hangy all the time.
He's hangy. We make sure to keep him well stocked with dried fruits and meats for such a reason. He has little, like, fucking Lunchables.
No, he has, like, trail mix in his pocket. His pocket bacon, you think?
Yeah, pocket bacon.
Sensing a lull in conversation after that, Robin stood up and dusted off his thighs.
All right, that's enough nattering on. Shall we have a go, my lady? I'm but an ordinary man, so I'm happy to provide you with a true sparring match.
That sounds excellent. I picked up my weapons and turned around to see Robin wielding a short sword and a parrying dagger. Interestingly, he appeared to be left-handed.
Motherfucker southpawed.
No shield?
Too cumbersome now, my lady.
Cumbersome?
Yes, he got cucumbered.
What?
Now, my lady, let's see what you have to offer us.
I'm just reminded of the SpongeBob meme where the fish guy's like...
I also imagine that Robin was the motherfucker who jumped on top of the fucking carriage.
Yeah. We raised our weapons and advanced upon each other. We were well matched, trading thrusts and parries evenly as we tested each other out.
It's an interesting way to do it without animation.
Robin was a nimble fighter with a good instincts. My shield gave me an advantage, however. I could use it for both offense and defense, while his dagger could barely bat my sword away. He didn't have the reach to get around my shield, especially not with our sword hands being on the same side. We just had disengaged, but I didn't give him a chance to take the initiative. I charged back with a new plan. I feinted to the left with my sword, but instead swung my shield to the right, aiming to the boss.
The boss is the metal in the
Oh, okay.
center.
Aiming the boss directly at his dominant hand. He leapt backwards in a panic, ending up slightly off balance. I took advantage, stepping to a low stance, smacking the side of his left leg out with the flat of my blade. He fell on his rump, and I pointed my sword to his chest. Yield!
Naturally, my lady.
Oh, the wainscoting calls to me. I was about to relax when I noticed he dropped his dagger and was pawing at the ground with a free hand. I'd seen this trick before. Not likely. I yelled as I ducked behind my shield, blocking the handful of dirt he'd thrown at my eyes. I kicked him in the gut before he had the chance to stand back up. He had padded armor under his tunic, so it wouldn't hurt too badly. He grunted and took a moment to catch his breath, and I placed my blade directly against his chest. That wasn't sporting. Lucky I fought my share of bandits. I admonished him, though in truth, I knew he'd done it to test me. He tossed his sword to the side and stood slowly.
I deserve that. Excellent, excellent.
He was grinning at me, though he had won the match himself. Most men aren't that happy to be beaten by a sword fight. Beaten in a sword fight, you know.
But I'm not most men, am I? I rather enjoy a lady with some skill and spice.
John chuckled.
You should meet his mother. I hardly think we're at that point in our relationship, old pal.
I hardly think we're at any point in a relationship.
More's the pity.
Will interrupted whatever additional nonsense Robin was about to spout.
Terrible, both of you, especially you, cuz.
He wheeled around to face me.
You know you only beat him because he spends all his time training with the bow, right?
Well, excuse me for winning. Are you going to put your fullers where your mouth is?
Fuller's our type of sword.
I raised my sword and shield provocatively at him. Come on, I'm ready. Will gave me a sadistic smile and pulled a pair of practice sabers from the barrel next to him. 2 sabers? Not only had I never fought anyone using such a weapon style before, I hadn't even known it was possible.
You're not ready at all.
Well, I'm not the one with fucking magical superpowers, William. Keep it up, I'm stealing your fucking pocket jerky. Bitch. Give me that trail mix, motherfucker. He eased in position, one saber raised behind his head, the other one looking deceptively at ease. Milady.
Well, are you going to stand there and stare at me, or are you going to show me what you've got?
Show me what you got.
My microphone keeps slowly tipping that way.
I didn't let him rattle me. I needed a moment to decide just how I was going to approach this. Were we taking the initiative and going in aggressively? Hang back and try to develop an attack strategy.
Listen, he's gonna be fast, and he's gonna be foo-foo, and it's a style we don't know yet. So let's hang back. Let's
Yep, I like
see
that.
what he's doing first.
Let's memorize his boss patterns. I hope there isn't
Let's
a fucking
Dark Souls
second
this
stage.
shit.
That's right. I'm not sure we have enough stamina. I decided to start on the defensive, hoping to buy myself a little time to learn Will's fighting style. I raised my sword but hung back, waiting for him to make the first move.
Not feeling bold, are you?
Come at me if you're so impatient.
At your command, milady.
That honorific was so dripping with sarcasm that I started toward him in anger. That had been the wrong choice. I forced myself to calm down as he advanced upon me, a flurry of whirling blades. Where in the fairy had he picked up a style like that? It was all I could do to block and evade his blows. I was not used to swords coming at me on 2 levels and from 2 directions. Using all my energy on defense didn't give me much time to analyze his style. He seemed to know it, smiling slyly as he prepared and advanced on me once more. I could only think of one possible move. He was considerably taller than I was, which meant... I crouched low and attempted to duck in under his blades, aiming at a strike at his calf. It had worked on Robin.
He's too fucking quick, though.
I yelped as one of his blades smacked into my sword at just the right angle. The sword flew downward diagonally, forcing me to let go, lest I wrenched my wrist and risk injury. His offhand saber was immediately at my throat. My sword hand vibrated painfully. I yield! Rot it, that's smarts! He nodded and beckoned me back up off my knees.
Sorry, but I like my legs as they are. Not a bad gambit, but you'll need a lot more skill to trick me.
I didn't even care about his superior attitude anymore. He earned it. You're amazing. Where'd you learn to fight like that? He gave me a seemingly disinterested shrug as he wiped off his practice blades and tossed them back into the bin.
I've always been good at physical things. Saw it in a book from the bureau. Had a lot of time alone to practice when they went off to war without me.
You didn't even use your blessing, did you?
Why would I? I didn't need it. Didn't need John to yell at me for using it either. I am glad to hear that you're learning.
Will rolled his eyes and I slumped back against a tree, arms crossed as usual. Apparently he was done with conversation. Robin clapped his hands briskly.
Right then, bravely
then
fought, my
clap
lady.
cheeks.
Don't feel bad. Will can disarm most men with one hand behind his back.
He looked at John and the two nodded at each other with an ease of longtime boon companions.
We'll have a meeting or two and decide how you might best serve the rebellion. If that's amenable to you?
Of course. Despite my ignominious defeat at Will's hands, I'd done it. I'd proved myself to them.
Wait.
It seems he wasn't done speaking after all. Of course.
Are you even going to ask her why she wants to join us? Just because she's pretty and has a vague idea of which side the pommel and which side is the pommel and which end is which? I will fight you. Oh, I think she's better than that, but fair enough. How about it, Lady Marion?
I thought it imprudent to reveal my entire thought process, but it was, indeed, fair to ask for my motives, even if Will had been less than courteous about it.
It's,
Freedom.
like, she's also been a noble for so long, running her own, like,
Like she's just going the path of noblesse oblige.
yeah, she's been fighting off bandits for the people in her section, Gladstoneberry. I feel like she, as a noble, would be like, if there's some shit going down and the commoners are being affected, I, as a noble, I'm to do my duty to help them.
Alright, it's my duty as a noble to help the people.
You said duty.
If Master Robin spoke true, Lord Joffrey has gone too far in Nottingham. I believe it's the duty of the right-thinking nobles to fight back against that kind of tyranny.
How lovely to have such a responsible young lady join us. Conscientious indeed, though I hope you'll get to personally know the folk we're fighting for. This is about much more than duty. Duty is for dullards like these two. If you lack passion for the cause, you're a danger to yourself and us. That's rich coming from you, brother. Who exactly is a danger to themselves?
Will's face clouded.
I know what I'm doing.
Said the one who has no idea what he's doing. Will stalked off at that, so Robin and John gave me an extensive tour of the valley that the rebels called home, and everything a small village could want. Along with the areas I'd already seen, they had stables, a field for livestock, some garden plots for fresh fruit and vegetables, and even a small vineyard that Leighton tended near his isolated cabin.
Because of course Leighton has a fucking vineyard.
That lush. Our final stop was an area full of beautifully decorated bowers, useful for private meetings or general seclusion in a busy camp. We came upon Nell in one bower, busily repairing a pile of tattered tunics.
And here we are. Nell, would you mind keeping Lady Marion company?
Not eunuchs, tunics.
Company. God damn it, Ashlee. I wasn't done reading.
Sorry.
My pleasure, Robbie.
Just know whatever it was her pleasure. She gave me a welcoming gesture and I slid onto the stone bench across from her. I'd help, but I'm afraid I've never been a dab hand with a needle.
Not to worry, my lovely. We can chat and pass the time either way. Ah, Nell, the measurements? Of course.
She pulled a small, marked-up stone tablet out of her apron and handed it over. Robin and John then bid us farewell and headed off towards the forested path of the secret valley, where their great stags often grazed. Nell and I joined a fine afternoon of conversation, as I did my best to help by sorting clothing for her to mend. She told me amusing stories about the Sherwood rebels, and I told her a bit about my past. I'd never spoken to a commoner so easily as I found I could with Nell. It was a bit disconcerting that she seemed to care so little for the difference in our stations, yet I found I've been craving this kind of connection with an older woman. I could overlook her for lack of manners. As the sun sank into late afternoon, we were startled by a crashing sound through the bushes. A small figure with rusty red hair went barreling towards Nell and enveloped her in a great huge hug.
Nellie, I'm back! Hello, my lovey. Did you have a good venture?
Nell tousled their hair, gazing at them affectionately.
I didn't see the bad foxes this time, so I picked herbs for our stock. Good work, Roan. Ah, you should introduce yourself to Marion here.
The youngster looked over, noticing me for the first time.
Ah, are you Robin's lady? You're pretty.
I'm not Robin's. I stopped short as they hopped off Nell's lap and made as though they were about to give me the same enthusiastic welcome they'd given her. But Nell grabbed them by the collar.
Little one. She's a real lady. How do you greet her? Oh.
They put out their hand a bit shyly, and I offered them my own, amused at Nell teaching the child manners that she did not display herself.
I'm Roan. I scout for Sir Robin and Master John.
They lowered their heads to kiss my hand, and their mop of hair fell forward, revealing their ears. The backs of their earlobes boasted tufts of orange fur. Goodness, are you a changeling, Rowan?
Yep, I'm sorry. I'm still learning the ways of humans.
I'm sure you're doing just fine. I've never met a changeling before. Rowan giggled and sidled up to me.
Then perhaps you could get to know me very, very well?
Their sly grin told me that they knew exactly what they just implied. Nell playfully swatted their behind.
Behave, you little rumpkin. You're too young for that talk.
They may have looked like a human, just on the cusp of adolescence, but I had to remind myself that they were likely hundreds of years old. Everybody in Avalon knew a story of a distant relative or a friend of a friend who had decided to become a changeling, giving up their human life for one of the idle pleasure in the strange realm of the fairy. They decided to forego their immortality and become human, or considerably more rare. I realized that I was staring rudely and hadn't introduced myself. Ah, I'm Lady Marion of Glastonbury. I'm the newest recruit for the rebels.
Oh wow, you're going to join us? We'll have so much fun. We can, what's the lady know how to do anyhow?
I smiled mischievously at them. I know how to fight with a sword, ride a great stag, and I can tell lots of stories. Does that sound fun?
Oh wow, you're dressed like Nellie. Except I think Nellie only knows how to ride a horse.
Oh, I didn't know that you were a swordsman, Nell. To be honest, I hadn't known there was a single swordswoman in all of Avalon, save for myself.
Used to be a merc, it's true. Got a mite old for the lifestyle though, and I had a child to raise and all. Now she's grown and off on her own adventures, so I keep an eye on young Roan here.
I didn't know that mercenary companies allowed women. That's fascinating.
The Topaz Lions or Sinjadi led. Don't care what one way or the other what's in your trousers.
That made sense. I read that some famed Sinjadi war heroes were women, and it seemed that that wasn't really a legend. I felt a twinge of jealousy. I wish Avalon had that kind of mindset. That made me wonder how Rowan would be treated as they grow up. By the by, Rowan, I'm sorry to ask, but are you a girl or a boy?
Dunno, do I have to choose?
Ah, right. Fae didn't have sexes like we did. They chose to appear male, female, or neither by their own whims. I honestly didn't know how the physical transition to humanity worked for changelings, and it seemed rather rude to pry it too closely. Well, many folk might ask, but I don't think you should have to decide unless you're ready.
Maybe I'm just Roan.
You know, I think that's perfectly lovely. The sounds of multiple boots crunching through the forest undergrowth interrupted us. Robin, John, and Will approached our small gathering.
Hey, Roan, good to see you safe and sound. Anything to report?
Rowan gave a proud salute.
All clear of bad foxes, boss. That's what I like to hear.
He turned to me and explained.
There's been an unusual number of light foxes in the woods around here lately. Roan says there's something odd about them. I suspect they're under the control of Nottingham's druids trying to track us. I was a fox wildling, so I know foxes.
Given Rowan's looks and demeanor, that fact didn't surprise me in the least. You mentioned the Druidic Order seemed to be cooperating primarily with Lord Joffrey, did you not?
Yes, and half-Fae creatures stand a better chance of finding us than human trackers. With our Fae protection, Roan here is helping flummox the beasts.
He ruffled Rowan's hair and the changeling smiled happily. Nell took their hand and the two of them left the rest of us to our business.
Any road, we come with gifts, milady.
Robin removed his pack and pulled out a pair of soft deerskin boots.
These should be more to your size, and here.
He removed the sword that was scabbarded behind his belt and placed it on the table in front of me.
Nell provided your wingspan, so to speak. This should be sized and balanced well for you.
Thank you so much.
We know a smuggler that had a small supply. There's been a call for contraband swords of all sizes. What with this ordinance?
Swordinance?
That is the best term for an ordinance against swords.
Alright, the swordinance? John grinned like he just told an amazing joke.
There's a law in Nottingham right now. Only nobility can carry swords. It's meant to quell rebellion amongst lower classes, but mostly it's just led to an increase in smuggling and some exceedingly long knives.
Gotta get them hat pins, girlies.
No, there was like this law where it was like in Germany where only nobles could have swords, but regular people could have knives. So there's this type of sword that has like a knife handle, like you would see on kitchen knives. And they're like, it's just a real long knife.
Soup for my family. Well, in Japan they had that with the samurai class too, right? Or no, was the samurai not allowed to have their swords?
Yeah.
Eventually, but samurai for the longest time before it wasn't the Tokugawa shogunate, it was the one after it. The time period that Rurouni Kenshin took place in. I don't remember which one that was.
Meiji? No.
The Meiji? It might be the Meiji era, actually.
Oh, I said Meshi. I'm like, wait, I'm not Dungeon Meshi. I'm a fucking idiot.
Meiji. Meiji. Also, I think called the Edo period, because that's when it's changed from Kyoto to Edo, which is now Tokyo being the capital. We have gone off the map. Sorry.
This has been Japanese History Chat with Ashlee and Megan. We know nothing of what we're talking about.
Self-voicing enabled. Self-voicing disabled.
Apparently V does that. We don't want that.
We don't want that.
Do they really call it the...
They do not. My brother is overly fond of puns. Ashlee, he's tall and he likes puns.
Oh god, it's Adam.
Adam, I love you dearly. He's nicer than Adam. Adam, you look me in the eyes and you tell me you're not a sarcastic little shit sometimes.
He's a combination. He's like if Will and John
Those
were
things
fused into
are
one
not
person.
mutually exclusive. I can be sarcastic and nice.
You
He can. He can be tender and charming, and he can also be a little shit like Will.
He's a combination of Robin, Will, and John, because Robin's the only white boy in this section. Come now, brother, it's a good one.
Will rolled his eyes. I wonder if anybody had ever told him they'd roll right out of his head someday. Then, to my surprise, he stepped forward. He thrust a closed fist toward me. I held out my palm, and he wordlessly dropped a small object into it. Kroga's whistle! I thought my great stag out of reach, but there was a chance she'd hear the whistle's call if she'd wandered into the borderlands to ferry while searching for me. So you raided my dowry chest after all?
Told you I'm quick.
Alright, so I guess that's part of the intro where she has a great stag?
Probably.
Okay, because I'm like,
Ashlee, do you know what a dowry is?
yeah, that's all the shit that you give up. It's like, there's reasons why you should marry this person.
In the dowry chest is her linens.
Oh, okay.
And like, it's said to like for the wife and husband to start a life together, and it's money given to the husband, but it's really just stuff for the lady to start a new life with
Okay,
her
so maybe
husband.
it's like money for the household, so they can
So-
like buy pots and pans and shit if they need.
There's money sometimes, especially with nobles, but for the common folk, it's like your nicest linens, your lace, your tablecloths, your bedding, your best nightgowns.
I hope you enjoyed pawing through my unmentionables. Will snorted.
Nothing I haven't seen before. Had to leave most of the goods on the road, though, with the sheriff's men on the way. Thought you'd want that at least.
Thank you, truly. It's all I really needed. John stepped forward with a small package for me.
Quill,
So that's why they call him Little John.
Oh!
quill, parchment, and ink. You will want to write to your father, no?
I grimaced. I suppose I should get that over with. But thank you. All of you.
Consider our apology for yesterday, milady.
I suppose I can find it in my heart to forgive you. I spoke teasingly and was rewarded with a duo of charming smiles from Robin and John. I decided to write my father before sunset darkened the sky. I hoped to convince him not to attempt to retrieve me, as I had no desire to be rescued.
Oh, diplomatic. She's
Yeah.
trying to convince her dad.
I may have been angry at my father, but that didn't mean I wanted to burn the rickety bridge between us. The next time I saw him, I aimed to be on equal footing with him, so he wouldn't have the power to decide my fate on my behalf. That was good enough for me. I wrote a letter detailing what I had learned of Lord Joffrey, and informed him of my decision to join the rebellion. I politely requested the annulment of my engagement, and said I had hoped to discuss my future with him later on. Feeling proud of taking the high road, I folded up the letter so that I could seal it and have it delivered to Glastonbury.
Long live King Richard.
Long live King Richard! I had taken supper with the leader of the rebellion, and they'd just done their daily cheer for their missing king. I hadn't joined in, still unsure of my own thoughts on the matter. Robin noticed, of course. He raised an eyebrow curiously at me.
What do you think, milady? Would you be happy if our king returned?
I pondered how best to answer him.
Evade the question.
What's most important is how we conduct ourselves as leaders. Good king or poor king, we nobles must lead the way. Robin chuckled.
A fine sentiment, albeit one that entirely dodges my question.
Drat, he noticed. Of course he had. I sighed. It's how I've had to live my life. Some of us haven't exactly had time to ponder the finer points of central governance over the past 7 years.
Indeed, well then, I do hope to demonstrate our good king's ideals to you. My rebellion was based on his vision for a better society.
And what kind of man would I be if... Oh, that's you.
And what kind of man would I be if I rejected the challenge of winning you over?
He always had a charming, flirtatious comments at the last word, didn't he? I wondered if he spoke to all women like that, or if he really had taken a liking to me. Was there an ulterior motive behind that flirtation? I resolved that I would, in fact, watch and learn. There was no merriment that evening, merely soft conversation and gentle music around the fire. Still, I was rather fatigued when I returned to my cabin.
A cat?
Kitty? It took a moment for me to notice the large furry shape huddled up in the middle of my bed. I stifled a scream, but not due to startle whatever animal had decided to make itself home in my tree. I was about to sneak back out and seek assistance when I heard soft murmur from the bed. I turned to see that my guest was a rather large cat. It stretched and gazed at me curiously. A wildcat? Perhaps, though it was awfully calm.
As someone who owns cats, this is just my life.
Hello, kitty. Did you have a nice nap on my bed? Would you like to jump back out the window now? The cat merely lay there, blinking slowly at me in contentment. I walked cautiously toward it, trying to inspire it to flee. Instead, it perked up, awaiting me as though it were a house cat. A suspicion formed in my mind. Cat City were the only greater fae who walked physically in our world. They looked just like ordinary house cats or wild cats, which is why Avalons always treated their cats with respect. It was considered quite rude to identify a cat city out loud, so common courtesy was to play along with their ruse, even if they were doing a poor job of hiding their nature. These cats are like, meow! I'm a cat! Meow! Meow, I say. Like this particular cat. May I pet you, Your Highness? I held out a tentative arm. The cat rubbed its head on my hand in greeting. Well, that looks like we're going to be friends, then. Too large to be a domestic cat, too friendly to be a wild cat. A cat Sidhi it was. I sighed. Why not? My day obviously hadn't been odd enough. Time for bed, kitty. The cat stared at me. I had the strangest feeling that it was telling me it wished to be called something more dignified than kitty. You wish me to call you by a name? I thought for a moment. Well, Aiden do? I think it suits a majestic feline like yourself. It accompanied that vocalization with a friendly headbutt against my hip. A positive response, then. All right, Aiden. Now, I truly do need some sleep tonight, all right?
You are going to wake up with a cat on you.
Yes.
Because that's actually my life, is my cat will take up a corner of my bed and I have to sleep diagonally.
A cat Sidhi delivery system. I doffed my clothes and slipped into bed.
At all because the cat decided to sleep across your face.
My new feline friend curled up on my feet. The warmth was rather welcome. It took some time for me to fall asleep. My mind was racing through all the incredible things I'd encountered. A renegade druid practicing forbidden arts, 2 men with divinely granted powers, a changeling, a cat Sidhi, all led by a single, all-too-human former lord whose greatest power seemed to be a touch of charisma and a dollop of infectious idealism. Who were these people? At that point, I couldn't even think about regretting my choice to join this motley band. I was far too curious what I would see on the morrow. The next morning, I met the rebel leaders of the Bowers, per their instructions. Even Leighton had joined them. I fought off a small shiver of fear at his presence.
Good morning, my lady. Are you ready to make the decision of your life?
That sounds grandiose.
Call it the decision of your summer, then.
He gestured around the table.
We would like to formally invite you to join the Sherwood Rebellion. Do you accept?
I do.
Sorry. Excellent. We thought it would be best to have you work with one of us as a partner. You'll assist your partner with their main responsibility to stand by them in battle. Your partner will also be responsible for continuing your lessons in weapon craft and other skills.
Battle buddy.
It's also what route you're taking in this and who you will smooch. Probably. I was tempted to keep you for myself, but I was reminded that it's best to give you a choice.
Yeah, thanks for that, bud. You just got me out of one of those. He winked at John, who flashed a satisfied smile.
Would you like to hear what we have to offer you?
What's behind door number 1? Interesting. I suppose that working directly with one of those men would be the easiest way to integrate me into the group. The rank and file of the rebellion members, Nell and Rona aside, still seem shy of me. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Then naturally we'll start with me. Beyond my role as the rebellion's leader, I'm responsible for working with the people of Nottingham and ensuring we are ready for the uprising. I lead our most visible aid efforts, particularly in the Brambles, where the poorest of Nottingham's people live. Your experience as a liege lady would fit well with my work, and of course I'd enjoy helping you hone your archery and sword fighting skills. John?
The large man turned his golden eyes to me.
I'm looking into the corruption in the Sheriff's Guard. I help protect people from their threats and abuse, and I'm trying to discover who is most responsible. I still think it goes directly back to Joffrey himself, but it couldn't hurt to identify the other ringleaders. We have a bit of argument there. I'm not sure Joffrey is fully in control of his men.
John smiled genially at his friend, who shook his head but allowed his second to continue.
You have dealt with many difficult nobles, no? I believe you could help me solve this mystery. I can teach you how to defend yourself better, even if you do not have weapons at hand. And I swear that I will protect you and keep you safe. And he'll be as overbearing about it as possible. Please choose my brother. Perhaps then he'll stop looming over me every moment. All right, Will, why don't you tell the lady what you can offer her as a partner? What? No. Are you refusing to work with her? She'd only slow me down.
Robin kept up his usual merry smile, but there was a slight edge to it. I would join Will just to piss him off.
I think that's Will's route. And what gave you the idea that this was optional, my boy?
Will clenched his fists in anger.
Why should I always take your orders? I have as much say in this rebellion as you two. You need my skills and connections. I need you to learn to be a leader. Once I've regained my title, who is heir of Locksley's holding after me? I am.
He did not look happy about that fact.
And what better way to begin honing your leadership skills than teaching an intelligent, skilled young woman to assist you in your tasks? Your squadron might be content to act as your cleanup crew, but should Milady choose you, she will play an active part in your missions.
Will looked like he wanted to say more, but thought better of it.
Fine, she can run lookout, I guess. She will do more than that. Go on.
Will paused and looked at me with an exaggerated sigh.
I have two jobs. I'm our connection with the Magpie, a famous local thief. He's currently leading a network of spies who support the rebellion. He's also my mentor.
Will smirked at Robin. The rebel leader frowned but said nothing. John's grimace was far deeper, but he kept his peace.
I'm also investigating the indentured servitude program in Nottingham. It's all tangled up between Lord Joffrey and the Druidic circles. I rescue the folk who wish to avoid it, and I'm trying to see if we can put a stop to it. I could teach you 1,000 things about the blade if you're good enough to learn them. Maybe some infiltration skills if you have the knack for it. I've never taught anybody anything before, but if His Highness of Lockley insists, I'll see what I can do. You should still choose my brother, though. I would like you to choose me for a better reason than that, and nothing will keep me from trying to stop your foolishness, brother. All right, I think that's the best we can get out of the lad.
He slapped the stone table in a beat of emphasis.
So, who would you like to work with, my lady?
I looked thoughtfully at the men sitting around the table. Robin quite obviously wanted me to choose him, and my experience did make me a natural partner for the rebel leader. He might not advance my martial skills as much as the other two men, but he was easy for me to talk to. He'd likely turn full force of his flirtatious charm on me, should I choose him, but I was confident I could protect my heart. Fairly confident. John's kindness and compassion had endeared me to him before the others. Rooting out corruption amongst Joffrey's guard might not play to all my natural strengths, but it was a worthy endeavor. Learning the skills he could teach me might be useful, though remember that he would not personally spar me. But might his partnership be a bit too overprotective, or after my long years with nobody to rely on, I might find his protectiveness a balm to my woes? Might I find his protectiveness a balm to my woes? Will did not want to be my partner. It was true, and I wasn't entirely sure how much I could contribute to his mission. Still, the promise of what he could teach me was quite tempting. I love the art of the sword and have never dreamed that I might someday have the chance to train under a true master, albeit a young brash one. His doubts about my skills and usefulness made me want to prove myself to him. Perhaps that was a foolish notion, but I was never one to back down from a challenge. And Leighton, well, he hadn't been presented as an option at all. In fact, he'd been dead silent the entire time, sipping from his usual goblet of wine as though he had nothing to do with him. It was one less thing to worry about. Frankly, the man frightened me.
So this is this is our route selection, I'm guessing.
I want to choose Will because he hates the idea.
Yes. Yeah, let's go with Will.
Will. I would like to say that Marion would interrupt, like, I choose Will. And he'd be like, oh, no.
The end. Demo end. Only the beginning.
Huzzah.
So yeah, Robin and Will's routes are the only ones out so far. After that will be John's route. And then they'll work on the Nottingham routes. I do think for either next time or if we want to continue now because it's only 8 o'clock, we should do the Nottingham route.
This time, you get to read Marion in the background, and I read the other characters.
Okay. Megan needs...
Because, girl, my fucking throat is closing up.
My jaw, though. We need like a 5-minute break.
Whew. So, what are we doing for 5 minutes?
For like 5 minutes, I actually need to massage my jaw. I need to like do jaw exercises a little bit. So if you could just, I don't know. I'm going to do jaw exercises. You can watch me or not.
And now jaw exercises with Mega-han.
I wasn't kidding.
I know.
So I don't see people most of the day and only talk for like maybe 1-2 hours a day typically.
You're doing all your speaking for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, my talking is usually asking my uncle who I live with, what do you want for dinner? And he'll tell me food, and then we'll go on, what kind of food, the edible kind, what flavor, multi-flavor.
It's very like limited dialogue options.
And limited food options.
So Adam, what are your thoughts?
He loves go.
I don't.
I don't think he was paying enough attention.
I was paying enough attention.
Game not your style?
I mean...
I've never pegged Adam from an Otome man.
No. I don't even like Telltale games that much. I'll read a book.
Adam is our captive audience member, by the way.
Basically, this is where the Xbox is, and he wants to hang out with me because he only gets to see me very rarely.
That is... No, there's an Xbox in the other room. I'm in here because, yes, I want to physically be in the same room as my sister-in-law.
Yes.
So there's parallel play. This is also parallel podcasting.
Yes.
One day we'll get to the point where Adam's having his own show in one corner, and then we're having another one, and then there'd be the meta of the third show, which is all of us having the overarching meta show.
Yeah, that's what we'll call it, cross-contamination.
I mean, someday we'll have a computer pal for us to stream 2 streams at once.
There are people who have 2 streaming PCs at one time.
Yeah, sure.
And then they still... Girl, I want to say this while my jaw is sort of, I don't know. I'd have to say this. There is a VTuber.
Okay.
Oh God, I forget her VTuber name, but it's Lee. She's been on YouTube forever. She was still using Microsoft Edge as her internet browser while being someone who's been on YouTube producing content for 12 years and as a VTuber, and is constantly having problems with her just whole setup.
Damn. Kind of like what I was going through. Like, yeah, we were 10 minutes late tonight because the computer decided, what if random parts of your setup just didn't work? And we're not going to tell you why. Granted, most of it was solved by like, all right, unplug it, plug it back in. We're done. But it was frustrating to say the least. And there's still some parts that weren't working, but which was fine because, yeah, it's been a week. It's been 2 weeks. Like, the episode, our finale episode of Date with Death, which was the last game we played on Otome O'Clock, should have been out last week, but Ashley didn't do that because, you know, the world. And I was just, and then convention, and I'm just like, yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah, the convention, so much fun.
Yes.
Ashley won second place in the costume contest.
Yes. For
I
my
feel
big
like you
boss drag queen thing.
Yes, I didn't place, but I don't mind because I need to fix my costume anyways.
Yeah.
Because last minute, as I was putting the costume on, I realized that my mask, because of all the extra stuff I put on it, had fucking shrunk.
Ugh.
And it didn't fit properly anymore. And it's all hot glued on the inside, so I have to take a fucking heat gun and unhot glue it.
Damn. To take a hairdryer to it?
Oh no, I need to take a heat gun to it. Hairdryer's gonna take too long.
Well, heat gun is just like a turbocharged hairdryer.
Yes, it'll set things on fire.
Yeah.
That's why it's faster.
You have to massage your jaws. I have to, like, massage my throat.
Drink your tea.
I have been drinking my tea. I'm almost out of tea.
I didn't think you'd ever be out of tea. The amount you spill.
Listen, tea is meant to be shared. I don't spill the tea, I serve the tea, bitch. Megan is continuing jaw exercise and she looks wild while doing it.
And it was then that Megan realized she would never.
And this is how we get 20 subscribers.
You know, the internet's a thing. Those images are just gonna.
Locked in forever. Someone's gonna freeze frame you going.
And my
Rocks, you still listening? Get on that.
So like, listen, my plan for if the price of groceries goes up too much is to start writing horrible 99-cent Amazon novels and making money that way.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
That, like, I'm gonna be that one person with like 80 volumes out
Of dirty werewolf feet pictures.
I have more decorum. Thank you.
Instead of OnlyFans, it'll be OnlyPaws.
Jesus, I'm not a furry.
No, that's the type of stuff that would actually really sell well. How far down?
So there is the legend in the furry community is that I can't remember if it was $60,000 or $120,000 fursuit commission.
Shit.
I think that thing had LED lights in it and a full cooling system.
That was definitely someone who was
That was like a fucking neurosurgeon or some shit.
either a neurosurgeon or they were the head of IT.
They're the final boss of IT.
Seriously. See, like, that's why you need to start delving into that if, you know, in the post-apocalypse.
That's my other thing is that, like...
Because all the rich furries are going to buy your stuff.
So that's my other thing. I can sew. My other thing is, if I need money, I will start taking fursuit commissions.
There you go. You need to call your business OnlyPaws.
There's probably already a site called OnlyPaws.
Yeah, you're probably not going to want to be affiliated with it unless they're looking for someone. Sponsorship?
No. I will say that I do know of a large cat rescue that is sponsored by like a local, not like local to me, but local to them, furry convention.
Okay.
I remembered that and it was like, oh, furries at their convention just donate part of the proceeds to it. To helping the big cats no longer have to live in, like, you know, cats rescued from, like, drug dealers.
Yeah.
Or, like, circuses.
Or crazy people that tried to kill, like, a person that also runs a private zoo that may or may not have killed their husband. Tiger King.
Tiger King was way more fucked up than that lady.
Yeah, I know. The whole thing's a fucking mess.
I like I've seen the videos from that lady's sanctuary. It is so beautiful there. Those cats are so well taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
They are loved. They live in this beautiful, like almost perfect to nature habitat for them. It's really great for them. They get chicken thighs or chicken leggies. Because it's easier you can clamp with the tongs on the bony bit and then you just put it through the chainmail fence and it's hot. You can hear them go all crunchy with their scissor teeth.
Nice.
We're off topic, and I would say that's probably long enough.
All right. We're probably not gonna have enough time to go through another route, so you just go through as much as we can in the last hour.
Yeah, go through as much as we can. You're reading that one, bro.
All right, bro.
All right, bro.
Hey, Nunny No, I'm Rowan, here to welcome you to the Made Marion and Chance demo. Don't mind me breaking the fourth wall. I was born Fae, so I have some special abilities. Our demo begins partway through the game. In the full release, you'll play through a prologue that introduces you to Marion and shows how she got into this whole mess. But for now, we wanted you to have a chance to meet our attractive love interest. Bro, we already read this.
Yeah. Show me the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Show me what you got.
Fight fate and escape from the arranged marriage. I like how that's the one for going to Nottingham.
Escape the night.
I gotta say, Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham was the hottest Sheriff of Nottingham. Good evening, my lady. We'll be right outside if you need anything.
I'm supposed to be reading everyone.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Bro,
it's your turn.
No, you do Marion. Remember?
God
damn it, bro. You're taking my lines. You're giving me yours.
No, I forgot that the narrator was also part of Marion's. With that, the door to my comfortable Nottingham Inn room closed, and I was free to hatch my escape plan. I'd been busy since I decided to flee my arranged marriage. Tiptoeing to the corner of my room, I opened my dowry chest and shifted the contents to reveal the supplies I'd hidden under a false bottom. One workday outfit so I wouldn't stand out on the streets of Nottingham. One set of false papers naming me Lady Anne of Tweaksbury, a lesser noble, fully qualified as a Lady Chamberlain. One dagger, a sad replacement for the sword I was unable to bring, and one long braided rope suitable for climbing out a back window. I readied myself as I waited for the inn to become more boisterous in the night. I checked my money pouch, tied around my waist and hidden beneath my skirts. I took out a letter that refused marriage and stated I was not to be pursued, though I had no illusions that it would be obeyed. At least my father and Lord Joffrey wouldn't know my wishes. I placed it carefully on the end table. I secured the dagger in a sheath at my belt and stowed my papers in a buttoned pocket. I tested the rope for weaknesses or frays. There were none. I checked out the window to see a sheltered alley that would hide me well. Good. I spent the next while attempting to relax on the bed, though in truth my entire body was quivering with nervous anticipation. One wrong move and my entire plan would be ruined. It had always been a risky plan to escape from the heart of the very town that was ruled by my unwanted fiancé, but our carriage route had been rural and direct. It was a miracle enough that I'd convinced my father to allow me to arrive in Nottingham a day earlier than expected, in order to help me soothe my nerves before meeting Lord Joffrey, or so I said. Thus I prepared to creep out of my inn, hide myself in a smaller, cheaper establishment, and slip out of town via carriage at first light. If all went well, I'd be gone before anyone had raised the alarm at my disappearance. I heard the sounds of carousing from the dining room below and knew it was my time to be off. Night had fully fallen, and there was enough noise to cover my escape. I secured one end of my rope to a sturdy sconce that was bolted into a beam, tugged it hard to test it, then I took a deep breath, opened the window, and tossed the rest of the rope free. I needed to do this before I lost my nerve. You could have tied it to a bedpost, you doofus. I kilted my skirts about my waist and gingerly hoisted myself out the window. You can do this, Marion. It's only the second floor. Shaking slightly, I grabbed the rope and lowered myself onto it, using my sturdy traveling boots to prop myself against the outer wall. I heard the wall sconce creak. I froze and listened. No sounds from my room, no alerted guards. I slowly let out the breath I'd been holding and continued my descent. After what felt like an eternity, my feet touched ground. I'd done it. Now which way should I... Oh, excellent job, my lady.
Oh, excellent job, my lady. I've always admired your courage.
Startled, I wheeled around to see the last person I had expected. Theo. He accompanied me back to Nottingham to face the music with his family. I thought he'd gone home. Instead, he was standing at the entrance to the alley, one hand on his sword pommel, and that tone he'd taken with me. This was not the Theo I thought I knew. Why are you here?
I'm afraid I can't let you slip off into the night like that.
Why? You have no loyalty to my father.
You're right. I don't.
He fell silent for a moment, regarding me with a kind smile that held just a touch of regret.
Listen, Lady Marion, he's not who they all say he is. He's a good man. He'll take care of you, and he wants...
Enraged, I pulled my dagger from its sheath and shouted over him. You work for Lord Joffrey all this time? You've been spying for him? You weren't driven away from Nottingham at all. Does this beloved husband of yours even exist?
He does. That part is true. And our families really don't approve.
Theo's shocked and saddened reaction was genuine. It didn't make me feel any better. I just learned that he knew the best lives were those laced with one's genuine story. Just let me go. I started to back away slowly, dagger up for protection, watching his posture for the slightest aggressive move. I saw his body tense, readying to draw his weapon. Still, he put his free hand out in a placating gesture.
Come now. You know you can't win against me with that pig sticker. Just come quietly and I won't have to...
No! As I yelled my defiance and prepared to defend myself as best I could, I caught the slightest motion out of the corner of my eye. A small round object flew toward Theo's feet. There was a loud pop and the sound of hissing smoke flooded the alley. I had just enough time to close my mouth so I didn't breathe it in, but not enough time to run before the smoke overtook me as well. I heard a racking cough and knew Theo hadn't been as lucky.
Quick, take my hand.
A harsh whisper broke me out of my confusion and a hand grasped mine. This must be the smoke weapon thrower. Who could have possibly appeared to save me? My better sense should have told me to be suspicious, but in my panic I took the only lifeline I was given. I clung to the proffered hand, which tugged me along in an unknown direction. My eyes gradually cleared as we raced through Nottingham's back alleys. My rescuer pulled me along, forging ahead with impressive confidence. It was as if they could see clearly in the dark. I know who it is, I know who it is, I know who it is, I know who it is. Sorry, I'm excited, they're my favorite. They were tightly bundled in a long cloak. I couldn't even tell by their build if they were a man or a woman. The world quieted around us and we passed out of the entertainment district. I heard the light slapping of their sandals against the cobblestone. I began to feel nervous that this unknown person was leading me so far afield. I tried to slow down, but they didn't seem to get the hint. I tugged backwards on their arm. They slowed slightly and turned their head. I saw the dim silhouette of a shadowed face.
We can't stop yet. He'll be after us soon. He'll set the whole guard on us.
That urgent half whisper didn't give me any information about where we were going. I had no idea if I should trust this person, or if by following along I was simply jumping from the kettle into the fire. Trust them. This situation may have been suspicious, but I could sense no malice from my rescuer. I had no idea where I was anymore, and every reason to believe that Theo had indeed sent the guards after me. That is me. Where are we going? I did my best to ask in a whisper loud enough to reach the person tugging my hand.
Out of town. I live in the woods near here.
In the woods, like a child-eating villain from folktales? This night was not going as planned, that was for certain. But what other choice did I have? At least my suspicious woods dweller had acted in my interest thus far. That was more than I could say for Theo, or for whoever might be lurking about in Nottingham's alleys at night. We kept up a steady jog as I was led unerringly along, and I was glad for all the training I'd done in Glastonbury. My rescuer seemed to possess a good amount of stamina as well.
Hey.
They skidded to a stop and I nearly crashed into them as they flung one arm across my chest, pushing us both back against the wall. Blast it all.
They're guarding the north gate already.
I peered around my companion to see that the alley in which we crouched opened up to a large square with the city gate at the far end. There were indeed more guards than I'd expect at the gate, and they looked quite watchful.
This way.
Sorry, I keep forgetting. I was led around a few corners into a small forested park.
I hope it's still open.
We threaded our way through the trees, the moonlight barely filtering through their branches. Still, my guide walked with complete confidence, so I followed their steps as well as I could. The trees cleared to show the city wall in front of us. My guide muttered something I couldn't quite catch under the breath. It did not sound happy.
There's an old gate there, but...
I stepped forward and made out the shapes of some extremely overgrown bushes in front of me. I went out to touch them and... Ouch. Blackberry brambles, no good. I don't suppose you have a torch buried in that cloak?
I'm afraid that would be inadvisable.
I caught the hint of humor in my companion's melodious voice. I looked around, squinting in the dark. Were there any options for getting around the wall? I thought I saw a tree growing relatively close to it. Fuck it, we climb it over the wall. This way. I led my companion to a sturdy tree I'd seen growing near the wall. From close up, it looked fairly climbable. Can you climb?
Yes, I think.
I chose to interpret that as a vote of confidence for my plan. My rebellious childhood was about to bear fruit. Follow me, all right?
Mm-hmm.
I reached up and tested the strength of the lower branches. They seemed sturdy enough, so I pulled myself up. It wasn't quite as easy as I remembered from when I was smaller, but I managed. I climbed a bit higher and watched as my companion struggled into the tree. Sandals didn't seem like the ideal footwear for grip against bark. Still, they made it. I heard them exhale sharply. Will you be all right?
Don't worry about me. This is a good idea. That's right. It's a good idea.
All right. Tell me if you're having trouble. I carefully picked my way up the tree, untangling branches from my skirt from time to time. At one point, I heard a tearing sound and a mumbled expletive below me, but no complaint. Finally, I reached a sturdy branch that stretched from the top of a wall. My arm shook as I felt the tree tremble under my weight, but I managed to shimmy out far enough to drop onto the wall. I crouched on top of the stonework as I watched my companion struggle up onto that final branch.
How do I get over there?
See that big branch? No, to your left. Yes, that one. Crawl out onto it, then jump onto the wall. I began to lower myself down the wall so that they'd have room.
All right, I can do this. Wait, not yet.
It was too late. I saw them barreling towards me in a fury of quivering branches.
Oof.
They leaped down from the tree completely out of control and pulled me off the wall.
Nice.
Time seemed to slow down. I felt myself falling. The wide-eyed look and the sight of the darkened figure above me, limbs flailing, yelling something incomprehensible. Incomprehensible because it's a different language. We thumped to the ground and I felt the singularly unpleasant sensation of the air being knocked out of me. That does suck. I've had that happen to me. I'd landed on my rear, thank goodness, but my companion had crashed down on top of me. Ooh-woo. I gasped and wheezed as they hastily scrambled off me. The world was spinning and I must have been hallucinating slightly because my companion's hood had fallen for a moment and looked like their hair was glowing. They hastily replaced the hood, apologizing all the while as I fought to fill my lungs with air.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm such an idiot. I'd never done anything like that before, and are you okay?
I held up one hand, signal that I needed a moment. They gently clasped my shoulder, offering me support. After a few painful minutes, I managed to get my breathing under control. It's all right. It was an accident. I sucked in a large gulp of air and felt my thought pattern return to normal. So we're out of Nottingham. What now? Who are you?
A friend, I assure you. Let's be on our way, and we'll talk once you have a seat. You don't look in the best of shape. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I'd rather be a bit roughed up than captured by Lord Joffrey's men. Thank you so much for your assistance. Our trek through the woods was fairly uneventful, save for the low throbbing pain in my stomach, legs, and shoulders. My companion slowed down and was taking extra care to ensure I didn't trip over any rocks or roots in the dark. Oh, what a quaint little cabin. Finally, we approached a clearing that housed a small cottage, dimly illuminated by moonlight. It was flanked by a stream and a water wheel turned industriously from a shed at its side.
Home sweet home. Please, come with me.
They took my arm as we crossed the building's threshold. It was pitch dark inside, so they led me onward and sat me down at a small table not far into the house.
Sit, please. Now let me just find... Aha!
I heard a clinking sound and an oil lamp sputtered to life, illuminating my rescuer at last. Hi. So this person, Mesa and Joffrey, tie for number 1 in my favorites. John is number 2, but their hair's naturally purple, and how am I supposed to say no to that?
Right?
Only a few times in my life had I met a person whose looks drew me in, making me catch my breath with wonder. This was one of those times. The person before me looked like a living work of art. Although I still couldn't tell if they were a man or a woman, I loved the balance of their features, the elegant brows, the high cheekbones, and the ever so slightly mischievous smile. Or perhaps it was simply the energy they exuded that suggested they were very comfortable with themselves. The fact that their hair, indeed, was emitting a light lavender glow, barely even registered. Either way, I felt a stab of embarrassment as I realized I was staring wide-eyed at my rescuer. My appreciation of their form was warring with my worry that I might mistake their gender and say something unintentionally offensive.
Welcome, Fatebreaker. You'll be safe here.
They are so pretty! What am I supposed to do with myself? Fatebreaker. The question whipped through my head as I tried to act like a normal person and not a flustered fool. Girl, same.
Sorry. I do find a dramatic greeting is useful in my line of work.
You're...
Clever, mysterious, fashionable, or perhaps Niberian?
They dragged out their vowels in Niberian with dramatic flair, seeming to expect a frightened response. I knew that for many Avalons, this would be the face of the enemy, but that wasn't what I'd been thinking. You're not my first Niberian? I still couldn't get my words out well, and I realized the implications of what I'd said in the moment. Those elegant brows raised in amusement. I mean, no, not like that, but I'm sorry. What should I call you?
My name is Mesa. Pleased to make your acquaintance.
They claimed my hand and kissed it, still giving me that maddening smile. The name wasn't helpful. They were really gonna make me ask it, weren't they? I'm sorry.
I mean, a knuckle kiss is generally...
I'm sorry, are you a man or a woman? I squeezed the question out double speed. I'm sure my face was beet red in embarrassment, and they merely chuckled in response. It was a lovely, gentle sound. Oh, that?
You can say I walk between.
I paused and thought. We Avalons were taught the world was composed of imposing, balancing forces, light and shadow, human and fae, man and woman. Hold on, I'm drinking.
Now you know how I felt for 2 hours fucking straight.
And yet, we all knew too well that it was impossible to fully fit into ordered categories in that way. I was a woman and happy to be so, but my preference for so-called masculine activities had caused me no end of trouble. And Mesa wasn't Avalon at all. Learning that someone could be neither man nor woman was only the first of many things I imagined I'd discovered on my adventures far from home. But wait. You knew all along I wanted to ask that, didn't you?
It would have hardly been the first time. I must admit, I'm endlessly puzzled by how much you Avalons care about these things.
I lowered my eyes in embarrassment. I'm sorry, I just didn't want to say the wrong thing and offend you.
It's all right. I apologize for having a bit of fun at your expense. Milady?
Yes, I'm Lady Marion of Gladstoneberry. It's good to meet you, and thank you for everything.
Oh, but you shouldn't thank me yet.
Mesa bustled away and started rummaging through the kitchen. They returned with a basket full of medical supplies. I caught the scent of alcohol. They rubbed some kind of substance on their own hands and reached into a small pot to get some ointment. It smelled a bit different from the druidic poultices I was used to. Having smeared the ointment on some bandages, they looked expectantly at me.
May I?
Of course. I was used to the ministrations of servants and answered automatically, but quickly realized that this person was decidedly not my servant. Once again, I felt myself flushing in embarrassment as they lifted the hem of my skirt and deftly applied the bandages to my abused legs. The touch of their long, gentle fingers made my pulse speed up once more. I'm sorry, you shouldn't have to do this.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for your assistance at the wall. I'm good at many things, but I admit the physical pursuits are not counted in their number.
Oh, you're welcome. I sat in awkward silence as Mesa finished applying bandages to my arms and legs.
It would be normal in Nibiru for me to see to your stomach as well, but I believe that's considered a bit too improper here. Remind me to give you something for yourself before you go to bed.
Relieved, I nodded, and Mesa put away their medicines before grabbing a chair and sitting across from me.
Now, my dear Fatebreaker, shall we discuss what you're to do from here, or are you too weary?
Fatebreaker, you've called me that twice now. Why? The cheeky smile returned with a vengeance.
I thought you would never ask. You see, my dear, I'm a sage of no small talent, and you have been a disturbingly regular feature of my visions for some time now.
What?
Do you know of the Nibirian sages, of what we can see?
A bit. I've read what I can.
The future is a misty thing, of course, but our honored ancestors in the stars grant us glimpses of what is likely to happen.
I nodded. Did I believe? I wasn't sure, but I understood that at the very least, Nibiru's sages had given our army a great deal of trouble during the war.
To be frank, Nottingham is in grave danger, and for some months the only futures in which it is rescued from danger involve a certain young lady who was brought here against her will. A certain young lady whose face has become clearer and clearer over time.
The sage reached out and gently took a lock of my hair in one hand. I found myself failing to object to the overfamiliarity.
She's quite lovely, by the way. Lively hazel eyes, flowing brown hair, an adorable mole. She's overly courageous and a good hand with a sword. I fear she may even be devastatingly intelligent, though it's difficult to see such qualities clearly in a vision.
Mesa is laying it on.
They got that game.
They let my hair slip through their fingers. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and tried not to let the flattery affect my better judgment. Alright, what kind of danger is this?
Nottingham is a troubled place, facing quite a few problems. I'll be happy to acquaint you with them if you decide to stay. My visions are unclear on all the details, but in many I see Prince John himself riding here with his army to occupy the city. There is a darkness in him that bodes poorly for the people here.
Prince John? It had been years since an Avalon monarch had brought their own army to bear against a holding. And a nameless darkness? I knew the Prince Regent wasn't popular, but that was worrisome. I paused and sorted out my thoughts. I see. Then why are you calling me Fatebreaker?
The easier path to follow would have been you agree to the marriage, yes? You chose to fight your fate instead. In Nibiru, we call folk like you Fatebreakers. It's exciting. There are so many possibilities now.
Alright, but then how? They held up a forestalling finger, and I half expected them to press it to my lips, but they restrained themselves.
That is the best part. Just be yourself. Follow your heart. I can give you some guidance later on, but will you stay? I happen to have prepared the perfect disguise, so you won't have to worry about being discovered.
They knew about my sword skills. They knew about my arranged marriage. They'd known where to find me when I snuck out of the inn, when I hadn't told a single soul the details of that plan. I suppose I could trust that Mesa was a genuine sage. Still, this was too soon. My head was still reeling from the events of the night. Well,
There's no pressure. It's simply the fate of this entire region resting on your decision.
I narrowed my eyes at them. This Mesa was a charmer, all right, and they drove a hard bargain. I imagined my original plan, which would have me searching the countryside for an obscure lord's household to run, if I could even escape Nottingham at this juncture, with Lord Joffrey's guards searching for me. I sighed. I'll consider it, but what is this foolproof disguise of yours?
Oh, most excellent. I'm sorry for the rush, but I fear we should swear away your disguise in case they come by here on their search. I'm afraid they do know where I live. We'll just need to,
They reached down into the basket of medical supplies and pulled out the last thing I had expected to see in there, and plunked it gently down on the table between us. A gaze stone? What are you proposing? Ashlee, click it.
A gas stone?
A stone infused by a druid of shadow that has the ability to reinforce a gaze?
Gas.
Gas?
Gas.
A magical prohibition generally used to guarantee a secret. A druidic gaze can only affect a person's words, not their deeds.
Just a simple pact to keep each other safe.
This has to be good. I don't enter a gaze without an excellent reason. Mesa nodded solemnly, all mischief and merriment erased from their face.
I will vow to tell no one of your identity, and you will vow to tell no one of the way I would propose to disguise you. You may still freely decide whether to accept the disguise.
That seemed odd. I certainly seemed to have the advantage in that deal, full protection from the disclosure of my identity. Even should Mesa be coerced or tortured, what could possibly be so secret about a disguise? I don't sense a trick here. I don't suppose you'll tell me why you need to hide this disguise method of yours?
I'm afraid not, except to tell you that it could ruin me if word got out.
My curiosity was getting the better of me, and I couldn't see a downside. I only hoped this disguise would be worth it. Alright, I'll do it. The genuine smile I received warmed my heart. In the age-old Avalon ritual, we placed our palms on either side of the Gaia stone, our fingers interlocking, except this time I was binding myself in a magic vow to a stranger, a Marion. A small thrill of excitement ran through me at the trespass against tradition. Ooh, Celtic knots. The stone glowed and I felt the druidic magic with which it had been infused flowing through my hands, up my arms, and into my body. We spoke the words with solemnity, careful not to introduce anything extra that could cause a magical loophole. I, Marion, was not to speak of Mesa's abilities where anyone else could hear of them, and Mesa was not to speak of my true identity to any other living soul. It was a gentle tingle that settled into my mind with deceptive softness. In truth, the gaze was like an iron binding.
It is done.
Oh, sorry. I nodded. Mesa took a deep breath.
Now, my offer. Lady Marion, if I may, I would like to shapeshift you.
You what? Mesa waved their hands to forestall my panic.
It is not permanent, I promise. There's a command. You can shift back any time.
I stared. You're not just a sage. Mesa looked sheepish.
Ah, you've read a bit about my country.
What little I could. You're one of the 13 great sages of Nibiru. Nobody else can practice shape-shifting magic. I recited the fact, dead-voiced with shocking confusion. What are you doing here? The 13 great sages were Nibiru's greatest treasure. They weren't even allowed out of the royal palace compound, much less able to take up residence in a town the next continent over.
Ah, I ran away from the Red King. I would not be used as a tool to slaughter innocents. I've been hiding here, but then when he was overthrown and the war ended, right when it might have been safe to return.
You saw the visions of danger of me.
Yes, and the people here have been good to me, by and large, welcomed me, let me stay even when Nibirians became the enemy. Well, there were arguments, but anyhow.
They shrugged off that tangent and looked me in the eye.
Lady Marion, will you transform? Not even that man we ran from this evening will be able to recognize who you are. You can stay here safely and save Nottingham, perhaps even all of Avalon.
I still don't understand why I'm supposed to be important. I'm not marrying Lord Joffrey. My false papers say I'm just a minor noblewoman. I'm nobody now.
My dear, if there's one thing I've learned as a sage, is that nobody is nobody.
Their kind eyes were my undoing. I'd wanted adventure, hadn't I? I'd wanted to live my life on my own terms. Maybe this was my chance. And besides, I'd run away from an unwanted marriage, not from my responsibilities as a noblewoman. If Nottingham needed me somehow, would I be able to forgive myself for leaving it to suffer? Probably not. Alright, I suppose we should do it now. What should I do?
You, my dear, simply have to sit back, relax, and clear your mind as much as you're able. I will channel the energy, but your form will come from you. Perhaps it's a you that you've been curious about. Perhaps you look a bit like someone you respect. You may imagine a form, or let it come together from your deeper mind, whichever you like.
I nodded, a bit frightened, but intrigued nonetheless. All right, go ahead. Mesa moved behind the chair with which I'd been sitting and put a hand on each of my shoulders. Close your eyes now. Just relax.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, sorry. I closed my eyes and tried to clear my mind. As my thoughts drifted, I found myself picturing a walk through the woods with my best friend. Evelyn was so many things I desired and admired. I saw her so clearly with the gorgeous white blonde hair, her fuller figure, her flawless skin. I felt a soft warmth travel through my body, as though I'd slipped beneath a blanket on a chilly autumn night. Mace's hands left my shoulders, and they cleared their throat.
It is done. Would you like to see yourself, my dear?
Oh, yes, I would. Mesa went into a room across from the kitchen and returned with a handheld mirror. I gasped in recognition at the face I beheld there. I really do look a bit like her. We could be cousins.
Someone you love?
Very much so, my best friend in the world. She arranged for my false papers, and according to them I meant to be a relative of hers. Oh, this is perfect. I can stay here. It was possibly the late hour and the rush of adrenaline from all the events of the day, but I didn't feel strange despite looking so very different. It helped that I shared some features with Evelyn, who was such a comfort to me. Ashlee, I think you should just drop down a save.
Now, should you wish to change between your true self and this form, simply say the sacred word, Sir Cat.
Sir Cat. Sir Cat. Sir Cat. Sir Cat.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
I let the foreign word roll off my tongue a few times until I was certain I could say it relatively well.
Oh, and do be careful about druids. They won't be able to tell that you're transformed, but some may sense a strange aura about you in this disguise.
Avoid fuckboy Tuck. I somewhat heard that comment, but was half distracted as I looked out at my now larger bust. A question occurred to me.
Mesa, how is it that, Oh, that's you.
Mesa, how is it that, my dress still fits?
Ah, well, matter. That is, the pieces that come together to make everything in the world is more flexible than you might think.
They had an enthusiastic look on their face, like Elvin would when he was expounding on philosophy, but then they shook their head and their expression went back to normal.
But we should get you to bed. I have spare room that you can use, and tomorrow we can go into Nottingham and you can learn more about our little conundrums there, yes?
The next morning, I left the small but cozy guest room and was treated to the full spectacle of Mesa's cottage. Silken fabrics hung everywhere, and the spots that weren't flamboyantly decorated were covered with odd botanical tableaus and scientific equipment. At least it seemed to be scientific equipment. It wasn't the alchemical tools or druidic runestones I was used to seeing. It did feel a bit awkward walking around in a different body, but I was excited at the prospect of being able to leave my old life behind. Who would believe I was Marion of Gladstoneberry now? A bespectacled Mesa...
Oh, they come in glasses.
They come in glasses, perhaps because they have bad daylight vision. A bespectacled Mesa fed me a lovely breakfast of scones that they had been given by a client as payment. Once we were full of baked goods and light conversation, they suggested a plan for the day.
I thought perhaps we could let you get acquainted with the town for a few days and then do a reading that would help you decide what you wish to do next.
That sounds like a good plan. Ah, and you should call me Lady Anne when we're about.
A good assumed name. I believe there are 5 Lady Annes among my clients alone.
We smiled at each other and began to prepare for the day. Some hours later, my eye swept over Nottingham's bustling marketplace. I'd never before been able to enjoy a market on my own without an entourage of guards and a queue of merchants trying to make deals with my household. It seemed so much more fun this way. Secure in my anonymity, I took my time browsing stalls, examining trinkets, and appreciating the local produce. I didn't see anything unusual at first, but slowly some odd details caught my eye. Several merchants had their money boxes displayed prominently at the front of their stalls. The boxes were secured with heavy locks and chained to the stalls themselves. Girl, what are you doing?
What?
I keep seeing you click away from the game and then click back and then click away and then click back and then click away and click back.
Don't worry about what I'm doing.
Even stranger, those merchants did not seem to be able to go into their boxes for change. Why in the shadow would anyone want a system like that? I also saw an unusual number of guards patrolling the marketplace. Though they didn't appear to be on the lookout for thieves, they seemed to be far more interested in talking to the merchants, and I saw money changing hands. Were they taking protection bribes? And if so, protection from what? I was near a kitchenware stall when an even stranger scene caught my eye. My senses, honed from being wary of assassins and other suspicious figures, drew my attention to an old man with an uneven gait. He was walking slowly into an alley not far from where I was standing. Some distance behind him, a young man was leaning against a wall, watching his progress while pretending to nonchalantly scan the marketplace. I took on a similar stance, pretending to browse the pots and pans while keeping an eye on the young man. I mentally calculated my possibilities. I could shout for help, but that would end in the probable mugger melting back into the crowd, free to pick another victim. I chose a different path. Keep the change. I grabbed a heavy skillet from the booth and tossed a reasonable number of maple bits to the stall owner. I melted into the crowd behind the stalker, who seemed intent on his target. Why was a vulnerable old man hobbling into his deserted alley anyway? I mentally shrugged. People did stupid things all the time. It was probably an ill-advised shortcut. I returned.
Oh, sorry.
He split off from the crowd and entered the alley. I pressed myself against the corner of the nearest building, peering cautiously out at the stalker. I think I know that silhouette. The old man was some distance away, but when his pursuer pulled out a knife, I decided it was time to spring into action. I raced into the alley after the attacker. He heard me and turned around at the last minute, but it was too late for him. My skillet was already swinging through the air. His eyes went wide as his inevitable doom approached. I brought my weapon down on his head with a sickening clonk. Ugh, I had not expected that sound. It was far less heroic than the mighty clang I had anticipated. The mugger let out a sharp cry and then crumpled to the ground unconscious. Multiple footsteps echoed through the alley and I found myself surrounded by guards. Where had they come from? They didn't touch me, but they fenced me in. The old man turned around, dropping... Oh my god. Hi, I know who that is. The old man turned around, dropping the hood of his cape, and to my horror, I saw that he wasn't an old man at all. Hi, Ashlee, welcome to the Sheriff of Nottingham.
The Sheriff of Nottingham. Naughty slapping hams.
He straightened up as he approached with a gait that was less unsure but still somewhat uneven, and I found myself looking directly into an all too familiar face. The man I just knocked out had been stalking none other than my erstwhile fiancé, the Lord Joffrey of Woodthorpe. He was as handsome as his portrait had made him out to be, but the expression on his face was far more severe. He's having a bad time.
Rot and ruin.
He muttered angrily.
Take him in.
He ordered the guards, pointing at the man I felled.
I will deal with this one.
I gulped. Lord Joffrey grabbed my upper arm none too gently and pulled me deeper into the alley. I knew better than to resist. He let go once we were completely alone and I backed up against the nearest wall. His glare was enough to pin me in place. Papers. He commanded. I stared, my mind a whirl.
Your papers, woman? Show them to me.
Wait, I needed to pretend that I didn't know who he was. What gives you the right to ask? My question came out as a pathetic bleat, but that was probably for the best. His expression grew even more furious.
I am Lord Joffrey. You're in my town, interfering with my investigation, and you don't even know my face.
I trembled in only half-feigned fear and rifled through my pouch, producing my forged papers. I'm so sorry, my lord. I only arrived this morning. I handed him the papers, followed by a polite curtsy. I'm Lady Anne of Tewksbury. He glanced at the papers perfunctorily and seemed to find them in order, returning them to me without comment.
And what are you doing in Nottingham?
Looking for work as a Lady Chamberlain, my lord. Too many sibs at home, so I thought perhaps there were more opportunities in a big place like this, my lord. I recited the lie I practiced, keeping my eyes wide and innocent as I could.
Then why in all the shadows did you decide to take it upon yourself to spot an assassin, follow him, and knock him out with a fey cursed frying pan?
I thought he was a mugger, not an assassin, and I just wanted to do the right thing. Lord Joffrey's stern face transformed into a mocking sneer.
You just wanted to do the right thing. Well now, Tewksbury must be quite the place. Does it have do-gooders cavorting about, frying pans at the ready, prepared to strike down any villains and ruffians who dare to invade their sacred kitchens?
I clenched my fists and repeated, do not retort, in my head.
And what will you do as Lady Chamberlain? Personally cook for every shifty beggar in Nottingham? Wet nurse every starving babe?
It was too much. The condensation of all the lords I'd ever...
Just cleaned that glass.
Of all...
He's moist.
Dewy.
Ew. Speaking of.
I'd ever faced flashed through my mind. I couldn't stop myself. I'm not stupid, I shouted at the man. What's wrong with having a little compassion now and then? We're meant to care for our people, aren't we? I know I can't help everyone all the time, but am I supposed to turn away from injustice that happens right in front of my face? If that's what being a lord is to you, then I pity this town, and I pity the poor woman you take to wife.
Ooh, girl.
Perhaps that last part had gone a bit too far. Lord Joffrey's pale, stern face colored and contorted slightly, but the expression it settled on was rather surprising. He looked thoughtful rather than angry.
So, the saucepan assassin has a bit of fire in her belly. Not even Lalonde takes to me that way. Perhaps you're not entirely useless.
I leveled and even looked back at him. It's a skillet, my lord, not a saucepan. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly upwards, and I counted it a victory. He shook his head and pulled a rolled-up scroll out from his pouch, unfurling it.
You arrived in town, yes? Did you happen to see this woman on the road?
Was that a sketch of my portrait? It wasn't a bad likeness. I silently blessed Mesa for my transformation as I pretended to study the image. I'm sorry, no.
Very well. Come.
I don't know why I keep doing that.
Yes, my lord. Ah!
Ashlee. He escorted me back to the alley's entrance, where we were met by several watchful guards. Lord Joffrey turned and once again favored me with a stern glance.
Do try to stay out of trouble, Lady Anne. I assure you my guards are more than up to the task of keeping the peace. Or, at the very least, learn to use an actual weapon.
But it fucking worked, bro! I know how to use actual weapons, but won't the guards take affront to a woman with a sword belt? He frowned, considering my question.
I consider it a shameful waste of resources for any man, woman, or child to avoid using their talents because of idiotic prejudice. You should have the right to protect yourself. If any of my guard hassles you, tell them to take it up with me.
With that, Lord Joffrey turned on his heel and left with his entourage. His limp, although less pronounced than it had been when he was pretending to be vulnerable, was still obvious. He was stern, haughty, and based on the gossip I'd heard around the marketplace, unpopular. Still, that last sentiment had been laudable, and I suspected it was hard-won. Perhaps he was not as much like my father as I had feared. I tore my eyes away from my unknowing fiancés departing back and noticed that everyone nearby was staring at me. Right, I'd been pulled out of an alley by Nottingham's notorious lord. I ducked my head and shuffled back into the crowd as well as I could. That evening, Mason and I discussed my adventures in the marketplace. I transformed back into my normal self, which left me feeling a bit more relaxed. After telling them about my encounter with Lord Joffrey, I asked about the strange cash boxes I'd seen attached to the stalls.
Ah, yes. So I presume you know about the increased taxation.
I nodded.
It has hit Nottingham hard, and many of the local merchants and crafters are having none of it. The old Lord Nottingham shifted the entire burden onto them, you see, leaving nobility free to spend lavishly. He was a rather nasty fellow, if you ask me. Lord Joffrey says he hopes to remedy that situation, but he's done little since he took over. In the meantime, many of the wealthier commoners have been shorting the taxes. He solved the problem by indenturing the worst offenders. All the money in those boxes goes to Lord Joffrey's first.
I gasped in shock. Indenturing them, I understand they were skirting the law, but that's a step too far.
I agree, as do many in town, but I'm certainly prudent about my taxes as a result. It's a crude but effective method.
Can they not simply leave? I understand he'll have confiscated their papers, but surely there are ways.
The Druidic orders support Lord Joffrey. Those who are indentured must surrender a blood sample to them so they can be tracked, not to mention the guard.
Yes, the guards. Some of them seemed a bit off.
Thoroughly corrupt, bribe-taking, thuggery, miscellaneous villainy. I don't know whether Lord Joffrey is involved in it, but certainly it doesn't help his image. I've heard he's mockingly called the Sheriff by those who say he's not a legitimate lord, just a trumped-up lawman. This is a rather large promotion in his status after old Nottingham and his son were both killed in a revolt last year.
A revolt? My, Nottingham is quite the place. Mesa smiled ruefully at my sarcastic remark.
Yes, it was ultimately put down, but a remnant survives. It's run out of Sherwood Forest, south of here, by a deposed lord named Robin of Locksley. He's quite popular with the commoners, though few were brave enough to support him openly.
Mesa, what have you gotten me into? If I were Lord Joffrey myself, I'd hardly know how to pick apart a mess like this.
Ah, but you are an extraordinary woman, are you not? Think of yourself as sort of a linchpin of destiny, my dear. I doubt you'll solve Nottingham's problems on your own, but somehow your actions will be crucial piece that keeps Nottingham from falling into chaos. And chaos will be what brings Prince John and his army, I suspect.
It seemed that was the best answer I could get for the time being.
My God, Maid Marion!
You didn't hear that.
Milady!
That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the man I had met that day.
Actually, Princess Fiona.
Lord Joffrey was a conundrum. He was ambitious, obviously. He seemed possessive of Nottingham. Perhaps he was a jealous and possessive man in general. What would have moved him to the extreme of indenturing his own people for tax money? Surely he knew such an act would cause fear, not respect. Did he care? There was no way for me to figure that out without getting to know him better, and that seemed risky indeed. I went a bit further afield the next day, taking careful note to avoid the more dangerous parts of the town Mesa had mapped out for me. On a crowded street some ways from the main marketplace, I discovered the show window of a weaponsmith's gallery. I was contemplating the swords on display when I heard the distinctive sound of a group of guards running toward the area. The smarter pedestrians nearby hustled around the corner of the shop to get out of the way. I joined them. The guards paraded to the middle of the street, and their leader bellowed his order to all and sundry.
Halt! Stand for inspection! We see the thief, an old woman with a bright green headscarf.
At that, the guards began to spread out, questioning everyone. We could only wait for them to get to us.
Picking on old ladies, typical.
I turned my head to see a lovely, low-voiced young woman leaning against the wall next to me. Her red hair and adorable freckles betrayed a Stanish heritage. Welcome to the one girl you can smooch in game. She saw me react to her muttered comment and favored me with this lopsided smile that made my heart skip a beat.
You think they could find better ways to measure their manhoods?
I chuckled. They're only doing their job. She gave me an appraising look.
I don't suppose you've ever had to wonder where your next meal came from.
I haven't, that's true.
When you're hungry and everyone treats you like dung on their shoes, you start worrying less about who owns what. And the guards, they don't do a whole lot of guarding when it comes to the small folk.
I glanced around before answering. The guards in question were still working their way through a crowd some distance away, repeating old woman in green headscarf as they went. Nobody near us seemed to be paying much mind to our quiet conversation. Very well, then. It shouldn't be that way. Nobles are supposed to.
Supposed to, aye. You must not be from around here if you think supposed to and actually do are the same thing.
I'm not from around here, but what do you know of all this? You look rather well-dressed and well-fed yourself.
I've done what I need to, cutie. The good thing about a place like this is that there's a chance to move up in the world. If you're lucky, smart, talented, and maybe a tiny bit ruthless.
Girl, who did you stab? She grinned, but it was
Who didn't I stab?
But it was far too cute a grin for me to see any malice in it. That's good for a newcomer like me to hear.
Aye, indeed. And thanks for letting me bend your ear. You're a sweet one, Mistress Noble. Wish they were all more like you.
As I pondered
I wish they all could be California girls.
As I pondered that contradictory nickname and wondered exactly how she'd known I was a noble, she moved in and gave me a kiss on the cheek.
A smooch.
It lingered too much to be merely friendly, but I didn't particularly mind. Her lovely hair grazed my collarbone, and wait, was that her hair or something else?
Oh my.
I looked down. There was a headscarf tied about my neck, a bright green headscarf.
That brat.
Don't worry,
Don't worry, it's all going to a good cause.
I heard rather than saw her say the words. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a brief flash of red hair disappearing around a nearby corner. Panicking, I reached behind my neck and struggled to untie the scarf before anybody noticed. It was too late. An irritated-looking guard stomped over to me.
Where did you get that, missy?
He jabbed a meaty finger at the scarf I was trying to untie. I knew whatever came out of my mouth next was going to sound like a terrible excuse, but I had to try. I suppose the truth would do. A lady was talking to me and then distracted me and tied it around my neck.
Oh, really? It's true, sir. I saw the pretty lass being bothered by an unsavory sort.
That wasn't exactly how I would have described what happened, but others piped up to confirm the man's observation. When the guard asked if any had seen where she'd gone, they all shook their heads in denial.
Don't see nothing. And you, missy, did you see where she went?
No, the fuck I did not.
I didn't see nothing. I don't even know what a scarf is.
I hesitated.
What's green?
Thought about the reputation of these guards and what the thief had just said to me. Yes, she'd used me as a scapegoat. But it could be that she was honestly helping the people who were neglected by these very same guards. Also, she's not old. Point the guards in the wrong direction.
That's right, bitch.
I didn't see shit. I don't know shit. I decided to put my trust in the charming young woman, even though she'd used me to distract the guards. She'd figure out I was nobility despite my relatively modest attire. Bitch, you were talking like a noble.
Yeah.
And that meant she knew I could pull out my papers to get out of trouble. I didn't think she'd meant to cause me any harm. I looked innocently at the guard. I'm so sorry. I was just so upset about the violation of my person that I didn't get a clear look. I think perhaps she ran off toward the marketplace.
Head back for more, is she? They always do. Lads, move out!
If villain, why hot? Their assumptions about the nature of criminals confirmed. They left without even asking for a physical description. That amused me, as they were still looking for an old woman. I was gonna say, ain't neither of you girls old. I wonder how she left that impression on witnesses. Somebody with those kinds of performance talents should be a famous bard, not a cutpurse.
Maybe they're both.
I mean, we're talking about the late medieval period. 19 is old.
Shaking my head, I decided to roam around the area a bit longer to avoid the disruption that was no doubt taking place in the marketplace. When I heard the mid-afternoon bells toll, it was time to return and reunite with Mesa.
Oh, shit, I'm on the phone, friends.
As I approached Mesa's fortune-telling tent at the back of the marketplace, I noticed a small crowd of people had gathered to watch some kind of commotion. I threaded my way through and saw a large, angry nobleman yelling at an unperturbed-looking Mesa.
Where's my wife, you rotten muggy?
I winced at the common slur used toward Iberians, but I couldn't hear what Mesa said in return. I wove my way toward the front of the crowd.
Probably dressed like a lady to lure them in and seduce them, don't you? Where have you stashed her? Tell me. Nearly all of my clients remain quite happily married, I assure you. Perhaps you consider that the problem is you, not me?
Oh dear, Mesa, that is not going to calm him down in the least. The man's face turned from an angry red to a near purple shade of rage.
Someone get out a saucepan.
How dare you! Do you have any idea who I am?
I know you beat her. I know the future I saw for her. Should she stay with you was bleak. I do not know where she went from when she left you.
Hisses of shock reverberated through the crowd. No true Avalon man would be violent toward his wife or children. It was considered the ultimate act of cowardice.
Lies! You must have stolen her away to resort to such accusations.
I doubted Mesa was lying, but in this case, the truth was a dangerous thing to tell. The man now looked frantic as well as angry. He was pounding his fists into his empty palm, but Mesa did not shrink back one bit. They struck a courageous figure in the face of the noble's rage, but it looked like violence was imminent. I looked around. Nobody in the crowd was moving to intervene. I even saw some of the city guards standing at the back of the group, not even pretending that they were going to protect the fortune teller. It looked like taking action was up to me. Oh, just intervene directly, baby girl. The nobleman continued to shout, what the fuck is that word?
Invective?
Invective at Mesa, who simply faced him, silent and dignified. I waited, poised to take action. When the man appeared ready to throw a punch, I rushed at him. Stop, you brute.
Shit, Anne!
It happened all at once. I was little more than a body length from the man when I heard Mesa's distressed cry. A powerful popping sound erupted at my feet, shocking my ears. Wait, hadn't I heard this sound before? This time, the stinging smoke enveloped me before I had time to protect myself. I gasped and fell to my knees, struggling to breathe, my eyes watering. I was vaguely aware of a major commotion surrounding me. Dull sounds of booted feet and indecipherable shouts floated through my consciousness. I gasped and coughed raggedly, one hand on the ground, the other clasping at my chest. I'm not sure how long I spent there, bowed in agony as tears streamed freely from my eyes. I just knew eventually that my lungs cleared again, my eyes squeezed shut and concentrated on regaining my faculties. I heard the neat clipping of a pair of well-heeled boots approach me. Still breathing heavily, I looked up into a calming sea of cerulean blue.
Oh.
This is Guy Lalonde.
He wears guy liner.
He probably fucking does, though. It solidified into a man who was kneeling down and offering me an immaculately gloved hand. Mistress, are you alright? Can you hear me?
Taking my fucking lines again.
He spoke, his voice soft and mild with a marked British accent. No, okay. When they say British in this game, they mean French. Because France was originally the British, and then the British moved to England.
Okay. Was it England like the Celts and the Picts?
Mostly, yes. And the Angles.
Yes. Angles, Saxons.
Normans. Thems. So, French accent man. I'm alright. I wheezed.
May I assist you? We should get you to a quieter place.
First, I had a more important question which I managed to squeeze out between gasping breaths. Mesa, the fortune teller, safe?
Yes, mistress. I suggested they make themselves scarce for the nonce. They asked me to assist you, and have you met them at the north gate? They said to address you as Fatebreaker, I believe?
Ah, good, a friend then. I reached out and allowed him to help me to my feet, which he did in one impressively fluid motion.
Adam, this character's you.
I mean, kind of.
Would you like to be a chevalier?
No. I don't even know what that is.
I've assisted either
French
way.
knight.
I've assisted either way, naturally. Guedelon, Chevalier.
Ashlee, okay. You clicked forward before I wanted you to.
Nah.
He lifted my hand to his lips with exquisite grace. I smiled, feeling a little wobbly. It was the after effects of the smoke, of course, nothing to do with this unreasonably handsome and elegant man. Lady Anne of Tweaksbury, thank you for your assistance.
Just call it Twerksberry.
It's a tweaker.
My voice still felt raw, but I was determined to form full sentences. Are you alright, my lady? Shall we sit for a moment?
You know, how much longer do we want to go? It's 9:15.
Do we want to stop now?
I mean, it seems like you're almost at the end, or you're just getting started.
Yeah,
we're on the second route, bro.
Yeah, we're on the second route.
It took 2 hours to get to the first one.
How about you drop a save?
How about I drop a save?
Where we are now.
You drop it like it's hot.
Drop it like it's hot?
Or just save over the other one. Save over the other. Okay.
Why not just separate save?
Fine. Okay.
The one time she bitches at me for like, why aren't you oversaving? Why did you oversave? What are you doing?
Okay. So we're gonna stop here for the night,
Yes.
and then December 6th is our next episode.
Well, to be fair, the instructions were clear that you shouldn't, when the full version comes out, you shouldn't use the demo save. So
Yeah. We're just saving here so that we can come back to this
No,
and
I
finish
mean-
playing next time.
I just meant that like there was no reason not to oversave.
Yeah. And then next time we're probably gonna finish early again. We can start the actual. We can start. We'll start. Do we want to start Robin's route when we finish the Nottingham demo, or do we want to start Will's route? Because Robin's came out first.
Well, what do you think we should do?
I'm not sure if there might be like a for plot order, like for best plot completance order, like Robin, then Will, then John, then.
I like the idea of doing Will because he's a little shit.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Robin is just like, ugh.
Yeah,
have to?
Robin's a blonde white man with short hair, not long hair. That's different from you, Adam.
All right, so.
So yeah, we're stopping here for tonight.
Okay.
We can do Will first.
All right.
So I don't know if it came across clearly, but how it works is John and Will, as I said, are half brothers. Will's mom's sister is Robin's mother. So they're cousins. So all three of them are vaguely related to each other.
Okay.
Because that makes John's stepmom. That John's also Robin's cousin via his stepmother, who is William's mom.
Okay. So that, I guess, concludes our streaming day.
Yes, that concludes our session.
This Thursday, we're going to be streaming again. I don't know if we want to take another stab at Baldur's Gate. Adam, what do you think?
Do you want to finish the Baldur's Gate? How close are you to the end?
How long a break did you want to take on Baldur's Gate? Sorry, let me.
Because we're forced to do split screen on the fucking X, and it's been
What?
annoying.
That's one of your boxes isn't doing the thing it's supposed to, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The S decided it no longer wants to function as
Yeah, the X has decided it's no longer going
S.
to read its internal memory.
the S.
The S.
The S.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Pain in the shit.
I don't know. Maybe it needs to go in for maintenance or something. Who knows? Anyways, yeah. If you
Probably.
can't do it like that,
But that's the thing: is the S really worth putting money for maintenance into?
Yeah. Also, like, we've been running into issues with the X. Like, so far it's crashed on us twice doing split screen, and we've lost, like, at least an hour worth of progress.
Or more?
And how much longer are we going to drag this one out? Like, I love Baldur's Gate 3. I don't want to play it forever. My fixation can't last that long.
well, I was I would say until you figure out once you figure out how to not have to play it split screen, just finish that run. You know, beat the boss, win the game.
There's, like, push, like, speed run through?
Yeah, just finish the game.
Okay.
Then I can torment you with Dragon Age Origins.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So do you
And
want
it's horrible. Actually, no. Well, no, you can't play it on X because you wouldn't be able to play the DLCs. But yeah, what are you playing Friday?
Friday Mega Stream, we're going to be doing Conan Exiles Steam version? Question mark? Yeah, we had to transition Conan Exiles from doing like just a PC pass through Xbox because of course as soon as I get into a hyperfixated state with a game again, it's going off Game Pass at the end of this month. So I ended up having to get the Steam version.
Yeah, that's usually how it works.
which is wildly cheaper than buying it outright on Xbox.
Yeah.
Even though it's like a 10-year-old game.
I can be screwed. It's fine.
I mean, I don't know what I'm already working on options. I mean, it's going to take me longer than the end of this month to get that option to you.
It's your Christmas present. Your Christmas present is Conan Exiles.
No, it's going to have to be like a whole fucking thing. Like Conan Exiles and probably looking at another PC.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's getting less and less viable to use the Xbox to stream.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why most streamers these days are PC streamers. So.
That being said, so Friday mega stream, Conan Exiles. Then Saturday we're going to be doing a survival game. We're going to do Power World because I make sure that I do not only play Conan Exiles. But until then, do we have anything else you want to say before we head off for the night?
I look forward to, well, possibly one day torturing Ashlee with the Dragon Age Origins PC controls. Because, God, they are... God. As someone who came from playing off the Xbox, they are hot garbage.
All right. But that being said, I've been Ashlee A. Button.
I am Mega-han.
If you have an Otome game,
Adam in the back.
send it to us. We'll play it. Where can people contact us?
You can contact me on Instagram at mega_han_otome. And we also have, it's Otome O'clock at gmail.com.
That is correct. You can contact us there if you have a game, a suggestion, anything like that.
Or if you're making a game and you have a demo.
Exactly. So, Ashlee A. Button, Mega-han, Adam in the back. We're done.
We're geeked out.
We're geeked out. We're Otome O'clock. We'll see you
December
later.
6th.
December 6th.
Where we finish the Nottingham demo and maybe start the Wild route.
There we go. All right. We'll see you later. Take care.
Bye.